It's the best. Sorry if there's spoilers.
Ready? This is a big league. This plenary session will now come to order. Good morning, delegates. My name is Kate Hannick. This is Daniel Hayworth. We will be serving as your first presiding officers for today. Gabby Donahoe is your parliamentarian, and P.O. Sympathy Satcher and Davis will be roving the chambers. A few announcements before we get started. Delegates, this is your last reminder to display your placards while talking. Also, your last reminder to state your name and delegation before speaking. And when yielding time, you must say the name and delegation of the speaker you'd like to yield time to. When attempting to get recognized, please do not wave your placards, stand up, or say anything. Please also do not raise your placards until the chair has called for them. Also, when trying to get recognized by a speaker who has been recognized to yield their time to you, be respectful in the same manner. Also, passing notes to the author is fine, just not all at once, and please do so respectfully. Also, remember to be drinking lots of water as it is a little warm in here. And when walking around the chambers, please try to do so, or excuse me, do not walk around while the author is giving their opening or closing statements, and refrain from walking around when any speaker is talking. Also, delegates, we'd like to remind you that the Blue Ridge spirit extends to debate. Being disrespectful is never in order. Making someone feel like they're not supposed to be here because of their beliefs is not what CONA is about and will not be tolerated in this plenary session, and this is your last reminder. This is a place where we're all supposed to feel loved. We're debating ideas and not people. Even if people do not agree with you, that is no reason for you to be disrespectful to them. We're all one big happy family. And with that, the next proposal under consideration is Proposal 145. Seeing that the speaker is present, the clerk will now read the title and any attached amendments.
An act to provide comprehensive prenatal care to pregnant incarcerates. There are no attached amendments.
Thank you, Sir Clerk. Author, you are recognized for your 4-minute opening statement and may begin when ready.
O'Toole, Minnesota. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to my closing
That is your
summation.
right.
Thank you. Good morning. 47 million United States citizens subscribe to Netflix. And it is with pride that I stand here today as one in 47 million. As you can imagine, as a typical suburban teenager with a crippling Netflix addiction, I've seen every show. You know, Friends, Scrubs, House of Cards, and most importantly, Orange is the New Black. When Orange is the New Black came out in 2013, we fell in love with the characters, Piper, Red, and even Crazy Eyes. But the character I wish to talk about today is Daya, who faced the challenge of being pregnant in prison. However, as awful as her situation was, for real women in real prison, the situation is much more dire. To prove this to you, I turn your attention to Bridget Gibbs. Gibbs, despite telling staff of her history of miscarriages, received no medical attention in her 2 months of pregnancy behind bars. And she still had not been seen when early in her second trimester, she went into premature labor. And you know, although premature labor is technically a medical emergency, they still found the time to strip search her and shackle her at the hands, ankles, and waist on her way out the door. She gave birth to twins, so 2 people, while handcuffed to a bed, and was still handcuffed hours later when she was informed that the twins that she had just birthed had died. And the reason she went into labor early is the real kicker. It was a completely treatable infection that they did not catch because she received no medical attention. But I'm assuming that this is your first experience you've had with pregnant incarcerates, so here it is in 5 points. 5. Despite bans in 19 states on shackling in the 3rd trimester, women still report being shackled well into the 3rd trimester and to the beds while giving birth. 4. Women who give birth in prison are 6 times more likely to suffer postpartum depression. And in a system already plagued with mental health issues, postpartum depression is a toxic thing to add. 3. Children born to mothers in prison are more likely to suffer mental health complications down the road. 2. Sometimes women who go into labor in prison aren't even taken to the hospital. And 1, there is no federal policy in regards to how to handle pregnant prisoners, which means that our federal government allows these prisons to treat these women however they want. And the saddest thing is, if you haven't heard already, is that situations like these are reported all the time. Medical malpractice is banned in hospitals. It is banned in clinics. And through comprehensive prenatal care provided to prisoners, it's time for it to be banned in prisons too. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to my closing.
Thank you, Delegate. You have yielded 1 minute and 15 seconds. The chair is now open for non-debatable technical questions. Are there any such questions on the floor? Texas, Texas, Massachusetts, Missouri, Texas, Colorado, Texas, Pennsylvania, Welch from Virginia, Bruns from Kentucky, Bowens from Missouri, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Isaacson, Virginia, Michigan, New York, in the back, Cleves, Wisconsin, in the way back, South Carolina, and in the way back, Maryland.
Quentin Hubel from the Republic of Texas. What percentage of incarcerated women in the United States are pregnant?
6 to 10%.
Thank you.
Lillian Bond in the Republic of Texas. How many prenatal appointments are prisons required to provide?
It varies state by state.
Thank you. Next question.
Mackenzie Smith, Republic of Texas. At what point in pregnancy is prenatal care most critical?
Excuse me, Delegate, that's debatable. Next question.
Brian Bruns, representing the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Thank you, Madam Chair. Did the woman you mentioned in your opening actually file anything for her infection, or did it go untreated due to her negligence?
It went untreated because she received no medical
Thank you,
attention.
Delegate. Next question.
Carlos Tamayo, Massachusetts. Currently, after women in prison give birth, are they able to still see their babies?
They receive a certain amount of hours with the child, and then it's given to
Thank you.
foster
Next
care.
question.
Taylor Welch, Commonwealth of Virginia. What are the most widely used prenatal vitamins?
Just a variety of, folic acids.
Thank you. Next
vitamin
question.
D.
Davis Perry, Missouri delegation. In line 23, what's the estimated cost of these prenatal vitamins?
That is up to the prisons to decide. how
Thank
much
you,
to sell
Delegate.
them
Next
for.
question.
Lauren Linus, the Republic of Texas. On average, how many miscarriages happen in the prison system per year?
I don't have that statistic.
Thank you.
Sarah Brahim, Pennsylvania delegation. Who will be telling these prenatal mothers their due dates and other crucial dates?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Who will be telling these prenatal mothers their due dates and other crucial dates during their pregnancy?
That's up to the prisons to decide.
Long Republic of Texas. Where will the funding come from to provide this prenatal care?
Funding already exists for this.
Thank you.
Jeremy Nelson, Commonwealth of Virginia. Are the doctors who perform these births permanently assigned to the prisons?
No.
Saxon Bryan of Colorado.
Excuse me, Delegate. You did not display your placard. Next question.
Maggie Isaacson, Missouri delegation. Will these women have access to abortions?
By this proposal, no.
Lindsay Garvey, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You mentioned mental health complications in your opening for the children of the inmates. Can you give some examples?
Yes, they display anger issues and developmental problems down the road.
Thank you.
Matthew Withers, Commonwealth of Virginia. Are there any states or countries that follow the procedures outlined in your proposal?
No, currently no.
Thank you.
Emily Bowens, Missouri delegation. Does this apply to women that get pregnant while in prison or just before prison or both?
Both.
Thank you.
Rishan Sharma, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What is the average cost per prisoner of this prenatal care?
Excuse me, Delegate. That's debatable. Next question.
Tyree Springer from the Free State of Maryland. Are there already functioning hospitals in these prisons?
There's a hospital nurse.
Thank you.
for a prison
Thank you.
nurse.
Q Lomac, New York delegation. Approximately how many babies are put into the foster care system because their mothers are incarcerated?
I don't have the statistic.
Are there any more non-debatable technical questions on the floor? Arizona, UN, Minnesota, Texas, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, Virginia, Massachusetts, Washington, Virginia, Brown.
Natasha Mann, Arizona delegation. So just to clarify, the woman prisoners would have to pay for these prenatal vitamins?
That is how commissary works, yes.
Katie Farley, Washington State delegation. You said that the funding already exists. Where does it exist?
It gets misused in a variety of ways by the prisons.
Okay.
Jordan Clements, Republic of Texas. Will there be any efforts to relocate these women with the nonviolent criminals?
No.
Whitley Drinker, Commonwealth of Virginia. What percentage of births from incarcerated women result in immediate pregnancy complications?
I don't have the statistic.
Thank you.
Kellogg, Minnesota. What is the percentage of children who are born with mental health complications?
Approximately 20%.
Patricia Long, Malden, Massachusetts delegation. Can you give examples of what medical procedures fall under prenatal care?
Yes, so it's regular exams by the doctor, just x-rays and stuff. Or not x-rays, I'm sorry. Just regular checkups by the doctor to make sure that there are no infections.
Thank you. Next question.
Sean Toomey, Massachusetts delegation. With this proposal, after the 48 hours in the mother's care, does the baby go to either a family member or in the foster care
And with that, the
system?
time for non-debatable technical questions has elapsed. The chair will now recognize the CONA and 10 speakers as speaker on the floor. The chair recognizes the delegate from South Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jonathan McCullough, South Carolina. Hello, and thank you for this opportunity. I applaud the intent of the author and share in his and everyone's passion for the problems that face our pregnant inmates. However, the cons of this proposal prevent it from being the ideal solution to this issue. One of the major faults of this proposal is the absence of exceptions. Under this proposal, all shackling will be prohibited, and no exceptions will be made for inmates who pose a security threat or a flight risk. Both Myrna Reeder, professor of law at Southwestern Law School, author of a National Institute of Corrections legal bulletin, and the Department of Justice, both of them suggest to have corrections officers and medical professionals collaborate and decide which inmates are security threats or flight risks. Then they can decide appropriate actions to secure these inmates, which are also medically harmonious. Several of the states who have passed legislation similar to this proposal have this type of clause in their legislation. And the purpose behind this is to help save these kids as well. We all care about the lives of these babies, and what I am worried about is a mother who is a security risk, who could possibly have mental health issues, who could harm her child if left unshackled. This is not at all the generalization of all of these pregnant inmates, but it is most definitely a possibility, and leaving the judgment up to the correction officers who know each of their inmates and know their situations and know which ones are at risk will definitely help save as many lives as possible, including the prenatal care that we seek with this proposal. Also, there are some other minor cons that I would like to address that prevent me from supporting this proposal. For example, just putting prenatal vitamins in commissary does not mean that they will be bought or distributed to pregnant inmates. We need more to ensure that these vitamins get to the people who need it. Also, the 48 hours that mothers are given with their children after they are born is simply not enough. We need more time for mothers with their children to ensure that that bond is started, and it has been proven that even in prison nurseries have improved the child's life in the future and reduced recidivism for that mother. So with that, I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. The chair will now recognize the pro-intent speakers to speak on the floor. The chair recognizes Tidwell from Tennessee. You may begin when ready.
Jake Tidwell, Tennessee. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Fellow delegates, I stand before you today in strong support of Proposal 145 on the grounds that it simply makes sense. This great nation was founded upon the principle of liberty and justice for all, and that is no longer the case. The 3,000 to 11,000 women who begin incarceration pregnant or become pregnant during that time are often subjected to acts that are simply brutish. Not only are current services inadequate to provide properly for women during this period, but throughout the process, many laws that are present in up to all 50 states are violated and go unpunished. This is absolutely unacceptable and cannot continue. From the beginning, many prisons refuse to take care of their pregnant incarcerates. The American Pregnancy Association is adamant that a proper amount of vitamin D is absolutely necessary in order to maintain the health of the mother and foster healthy development of the baby. In addition, calcium, folic acid, and iron are crucial. Women who are lacking in any or all of these key nutrients are advised to take prenatal supplements, which are often denied to prisoners. Instead, the average amount of nutrients, specifically vitamin D in this study, that the pregnant incarcerate was found to have on average was 15%. Prisoners are not 15% of a person, they are a whole person, and we should treat them as such. Vitamin D supports the growth, bone strength, and immune system development of a baby, and as such, it is necessary to see that a proper amount is accumulated. And if proper access to prenatal care is not obtained for the mother, the child is 3 times more likely to be born underweight and 5 times more likely to die at birth. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 70% of children born to incarcerated mothers suffer from lifelong emotional and psychological problems, including but not limited to withdrawal, hypervigilance, anger issues, severe aggression, and hostility towards caregivers. Children who are born to an incarcerated mother have the highest
I'm
dropout
sorry,
rate.
Delegate, your time has elapsed. The floor is now open for con pro debate. Is there a con speaker on this proposal? The chair would like to recognize the delegate from the Model United Nations. Delegate, your time has begun.
I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Kentucky runs from Kentucky.
That is your right.
Will the author yield to a possible series of questions?
Does the author yield?
And I reserve my right to speak thereafter.
That's your right.
Yes.
Under the provisions of your proposal, will expectant mothers receive medical examinations as a component of prenatal care?
Yes.
Will they receive a prenatal nutrition counseling or the provisions of appropriate?
Not by this proposal.
Will screening of and treatment for women with high-risk pregnancies be required?
Yes.
And will screening for HIV be offered to pregnant women?
When women enter prison, they're administered a pregnancy test and as well as an HIV screening.
Ladies and gentlemen, the provisions of this proposal only cover 3 things. If you look at the proposal for action, they only receive the right to prenatal vitamins, the right to know their due dates and any other crucial dates, and they shall not be shackled. For some statistics, 43 states do not require medical examinations as a component of prenatal care. 41 states do not require prenatal nutrition counseling. 34 states do not require screening and treatment for women with high-risk pregnancies. 48 states do not offer pregnant women screening for HIV. The problem with this proposal is that it does not provide comprehensive care. Medical examinations are a crucial part of pregnancy. And for nutrition, 300 extra calories are needed daily to maintain a healthy pregnancy from a balanced diet of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and a minimum of other fats and those kind of products. Supplements will not cover this. For treatment of high-risk
Your time has
pregnancies,
elapsed. The chair will now recognize a pro speaker. Is there such a speaker on the floor? The chair would like to recognize Delegate from Louisiana, McAdams. Delegate, your time has begun.
All right, that was unfortunate. Mac Adam from Louisiana. I'd like to yield any remaining time to Craig from Florida. All right, so let me just flip to my page really quick. All right, so I'm about to tell you something that hopefully all of you agree with, that everyone deserves basic human rights. Now, this proposal deems to give these people or these women in prison these basic human rights that they deserve. The fact that we are in this room even debating this topic makes me sick. Now, I'm not going to be paying my taxes when I'm 18 to go towards these prisons to be discriminating against women who are in prison, obviously giving birth. Now, I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to Craig from Florida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Camille Craig, and I am from Florida. Just to refute a few con arguments so that the author doesn't have to do that and we can focus on a little bit more important issues in that. I'd like to say that making it to where we are shackling women when they are giving birth is completely ridiculous, and saying that they might be dangerous is a really ridiculous statement, because pregnant people often can't cause great harm. And I think that's a really ridiculous statement, and I don't feel that is entirely valid. And so with that, I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. The floor is now open for amendments, and amendments will be in order for the next 10 minutes. Is there a con speaker on the floor? The chair would like to recognize Delegate Menon from Arizona. Delegate, your time has begun.
Natasha Menon from the Arizona delegation. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to reserve the right to yield any remaining time to Flynn from Connecticut.
That is your right.
Thank you. I completely agree with the intent of this proposal. I think it's preposterous that women are not given the options to have these prenatal vitamins currently, but unfortunately, I don't think this proposal goes far enough in really addressing the problem. First of all, when talking about the proposal for action itself, nowhere does it mention, I'm going to reiterate what a previous con delegate said, anything about doctor checkups. It purely talks about the sale of these prenatal vitamins. But then secondly, we have to see that women actually still have to pay for these prenatal vitamins. If we're able to spend money on these prisons, we should at least be available to provide these free vitamins for these women who are pregnant to provide for their safety. But then we see that also that these women are not going to be educated about the necessity for these prenatal vitamins. So at that point, why are they going to buy these vitamins if they can use that money for something else in the commissary? There needs to be education as well as free giving these vitamins for free to these women so we can properly educate them and make sure that they're the healthiest they can be. And with that, I yield the remaining time to Flynn from Connecticut.
45 seconds.
Chris Flynn, State of Connecticut. Like the previous con speakers, I very much applaud the author's proposal. It is a noble thing he's doing, and it's very sad that this has to be even an issue. However, the simple fact that these women are being forced to pay for their own vitamins, and the fact that I believe it was stated they will not even be separated from other violent prisoners, is very concerning to me. Everything should be done to make sure that these women are healthy and that their children are healthy, and yet this proposal is not doing everything that could be done. So while it is certainly a good first step, it simply is not a big enough step. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Why, thank you, Delegate. The chair will now entertain a pro speaker. Is there such a speaker on the floor? The chair would like to recognize Delegate Bailey from North Carolina. Your time has begun.
Thank you, Chair. John Bailey, North Carolina. I reserve the right to yield any remaining time to Delegate Dawes from Tennessee.
That is your right.
And will the proposed author yield to a series of questions?
Do you yield? Author, do you yield? Excuse me, author. Do you yield?
Yes.
And I reserve my right to speak thereafter.
That is your right.
How many women give birth in prison annually?
Approximately 10,000.
And do these women usually know the due date of their pregnancy?
In most states, they are not told that information.
And what kind of restrictions do these women usually have during the birthing process?
A lot of times they're handcuffed to the bed.
So what I have to say is, yes, these women have committed a crime, but shackling and the way these people are treated is just inhumane. Not only are these women some of the most vulnerable people right now, but so are their babies. These babies should not be punished for the acts of its mother. We need to start treating our prisoners as humans and not animals. And with that, I yield my remaining time to Dawes from Tennessee.
Yusuf Dawes, Tennessee. The most common complaint that I've heard so far is that this proposal doesn't go far enough. However, I'd like you to consider the fact that you need to compare what there is today versus what there will be after this proposal. It may not be the perfect solution, but it's better than what there is right now. There should never be a pregnant woman who has to go through her labor shackled. There should never be a pregnant woman who is denied her access to prenatal vitamins. And they should have the right to this prenatal care. I recognize that it's not perfect, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that it takes a step in the right direction. So with that, I urge passage, and I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Why, thank you, Delegate. The chair will now entertain a con speaker. Is there such a speaker on the floor? The chair would like to recognize Delegate Foster from Tennessee. Voice you. Yeah. Your time has begun.
Michaela Forsyth, Tennessee. Thank you, Honorable Chair. And I reserve the right to yield the remaining amount of time to Graham from Oklahoma.
That is your right.
Although I understand that this is a step in the right direction, This step is minuscule, and in fact, it does not go even where our laws are saying that we should be. According to the civil liberties that are granted to prisoners, they're granted to full and comprehensive medical care for all short and long-term illnesses or disabilities. Considering that pregnancy is deserving of long or short-term medical care, it denotes that the fact that we are not providing prenatal vitamins or medical care in general for free for these prisoners, considering the fact that they do not have the right to get a job that has a full minimum wage in order to pay for the medical care, considering the fact that we are not giving them this for free, it is going against the laws that are already in place to sell them prenatal vitamins instead of providing it for them like any other medication. So in order for us to say that yes, this is a step in the right direction, this specific part of the proposal is actually a step backwards. And I understand the author's intent, saying that he is trying to provide further medical care in our prisons. However, the fact that we are not upholding what we were meant to be doing in the first place, that is the biggest issue here, considering the fact that we are supposed to be providing full and comprehensive medical care to begin with, and we are not doing that. We need to have enforcement, not regulation restricting the rights of women. We need to have enforcement upholding the rights that are provided to them to begin with. And with that, I yield my time to my fellow delegate, Graham from Oklahoma.
23 seconds.
Thank you, Graham, Oklahoma. This proposal restricts law enforcement professionals and demonizes them based off of anecdotal evidence, emotional evidence, and a TV show drama on Netflix. Law enforcement professionals are not the problem. Overstepping bounds and demonizing them is the problem. This proposal does not go far enough in giving women proper
Thank you,
care.
Delegate. Your time
and it
has
blames
elapsed.
on
The
law
chair is now
enforcement
seeking a
profession.
pro speaker. Is there such a speaker on the floor? The chair would like to recognize the delegate from Massachusetts. Your time has begun.
Nima Mungai, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I reserve the right to yield the rest of my time for Sealer from Wisconsin.
That is your right.
When you get convicted, you lose many of your rights, but not the rights of your family or your friends or your unborn child. 6 to 10% of incarcerated women are pregnant. And if there are 113,000 incarcerated women, that means that 11,300 women in the country are pregnant and being mistreated. A person gains, on average, 25 to 30 pounds while pregnant. That means that they are left to not really be able to move and not be able to do as many things as they did before they were pregnant. And therefore, shackling someone who is feeling morning sickness, fatigue, back pain, and bloating is just wrong. And saying that they won't have any money to buy these things, there are many programs in prisons that allow prisoners to work and therefore be able to buy these needs in the commissary. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to Sealer from Wisconsin.
1 minute.
Jenna Seiler, Wisconsin delegation. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, previous delegate. I'd just like to address some previous con speakers. The fact of the matter is that currently we only allow pregnant women women who just delivered to stay with their baby for 24 hours. So by adding an extra day, I think we increase our chances of lowering postpartum depression by quite a bit. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I feel like in this case, this is a step in the right direction, even if it may not be going far enough. I remind you that this is a proposal, not legislation, so it's simply an idea, and we need to further it. In addition, labor is incredibly painful and oftentimes dangerous, so I highly doubt prisoners are going to be running away from professional medical care to go deliver a baby into the woods. I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Why, thank you, Delegate. The chair will now entertain a final con speaker. Is there such a speaker on the floor? The chair would like to recognize Delegate Henry from New York.
Bryson, Henry, New York State delegation. I'd like to make a motion to hear the amendment.
Excuse me, Delegate, you are out of order. You did not display your placard. Is there another final con speaker on the floor? The chair would like to recognize the delegate from South Carolina, Hobart.
Rock Hobart, South Carolina delegation. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Halem from Massachusetts.
That is your right.
We are here today to debate proposals, not ideas. Everyone here supports the general idea of this proposal, but this specific proposal is not the way to do it. As the previous speaker stated, there is no collaboration between professionals. We need to let doctors and nurses do their jobs,
but we also need to let prison guards do their jobs. They know these inmates better than anyone, and they know the potential risks that they could cause. Without exceptions to this proposal, it just isn't feasible. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to Halen from Massachusetts.
Dean of Lamb Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I would like to talk about the historical danger of what happens when you pass a half measure. First of all, in this proposal, inmates would still be caused to pay money for the vitamins that they need to successfully deliver a baby. That is a half measure in my book. They will also not address the fact that we have a very underfunded prison healthcare system. A person recently gave birth and their anesthetic was sugar. A doctor applied sugar as an anesthetic to a person who just had a cesarean section. That is ridiculous, and not addressing that is a half measure. And when we make half measures in this country, such as the 15th Amendment, not including a woman's right to vote, we didn't get a woman's right to vote for another 70 years after that. We have passed 2 Toxic Chemical Regulations Act in the past 40 years. Neither have included the regulation of asbestos. Asbestos is still not a banned substance in the United States because we took half measures each time, kicked the can down the road. The way you make big change is you do it all at once, because if you don't do it when you're debating the issue, you kick it down the road and it may not happen for another 40, 50, 60 years. I don't want to see this happen with the prison healthcare system. I want to make sure that if people need healthcare, they're not giving sugar as an anesthetic. They're giving real professional treatment and delivering safe, healthy babies. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. By your actions, you have yielded the remainder of your time. Before we move into the author's 3-minute and 15 closing summation, I would like to remind delegates that the undercurrent will cease while the author is speaking. Delegate, you may begin when ready.
O'Toole, Minnesota. Thank you. I would first like to remind everyone that the sins of the mother are not the sins of the innocent child. And then I'd like to talk about prenatal vitamins for a second. They cost on average 30 cents a day, $9 a month. And what we are trying to do with this proposal is grant women in prison the same right to a healthy birthing process as women on the outside. And women on the outside, guess what? They pay for their vitamins too. And then we talk and we say that, the prison system is underfunded, but then we say that we should give them out for free. To me, that just doesn't quite make sense. And I'd like to remind everyone that this is a step in the right direction, and yeah, maybe it doesn't have everything encompassed in it, but it does go pretty far. I added extra time to the 24-hour standard that the mother gets to spend with the child because the extra 24 hours does significantly decrease the risk of postpartum depression. And again, I'd like to agree with someone who mentioned it earlier. A woman is only taken to the hospital once she's giving or in labor. Is she really going to make a break for it then? That's ridiculous. And and I'm sorry, all I could find was evidence. I've never been to prison, and nor have I ever been pregnant. But I would like to tell you just another little story here. There was a woman a few years ago who entered federal prison and went into labor after 10 days of being there. She was then shackled to she was shackled to a bed and was left in a cell alone by herself for hours as she bled in agony. And a prison guard happened to go by as the baby breached and was able to jump in and help deliver it. But when it came out, the umbilical cord was wrapped around its head and there was no medical attention, and that child died. Sadly, this is one of thousands each year. And I know, change is scary, but what we need to do, as Taylor Swift would say, is drive headfirst, fearless. And I'd like to close out with a Michelle Obama quote, who said, "We are all driven by the idea that things as is just won't do. Let's finish the work for all Americans." We should not be content with complacency, so let us raise our voices for those who don't have one. And I'd like to remind you that this proposal is feasible, it's well-funded, and right now it's just common sense. So what it really comes down to is how we are going to treat our prisoners. Are we going to give them the basic human rights that they deserve and treat them like people who made mistakes and deserve some rehabilitation, or are we going to treat them like animals? The choice is yours, but I encourage you to make the right decision. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Delegate. Will the rovers please seal the chambers? The motion before this plenary session is that Proposal 145 pass. All those in favor, please stand and in a normal speaking voice say aye. Aye. Thank you, delegates. All those opposed in a normal speaking voice nay. Nay. The ayes have it. This proposal does pass. Delegates, I would like to thank you for your respect during that proposal, and we expect it to keep up through the rest of this plenary session. Will the author of Proposal 320 please approach the podium, and delegates remember to congratulate the author outside chambers.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you, delegates. We will now move on to proposal number 320. Seeing that the author is present, will the clerk please read the title of proposal 320 as well as any attached amendments?
Build a better electrical switch. There is one amendment. In line 28, add, all newly constructed federal government buildings after 2020 will be required to have these new outlets with switches.
Author, you will have a time of 4 minutes for your opening statement, and your time has begun.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Delegate Sowers from the state of North Carolina. I'd like to reserve the right to yield any remaining time to my closing summation.
That is your right.
I'll be honest. The only thing that bothers me more than the fact that our ice caps are slowly melting away is the knowledge that we are entirely complacent with that. The only thing that haunts me more than to know that thousands of species disappear from this beautiful world every year is to know that we are satisfied with that. The only thing that keeps me up at night tossing and turning more than to know that there are millions of deaths every year, totally preventable from our addiction to coal energy, is to know that we utterly refuse to do anything about it. But what if I told you there was an easy solution here, an easy thing to do, something that we could all do, all contribute to maybe save this world, to keep it for another generation, maybe make a small effort, a small investment, maybe an investment of about $20 million a year that could maybe save thousands of lives, millions of lives, billions of dollars. What if I told you that we could save $5 billion a year in power if only half of the people in this country adopted my proposal, and only half of those people that adopted it used it? We could save $5 billion. What if I told you that through this we could cut so much coal energy that we would gain back 130,000 lost work days in this nation because workers have to breathe in so much coal soot? We could gain back $8 billion in lost productivity because people have to go home early, because people can't go to work because they are breathing so much trashy, disgusting, polluted air. What if I told you that there are 2,000 heart attacks in this nation that we could stop right now? What if I told you there were 2,000 additional preventative deaths from other side effects of our addiction to coal energy that we could stop through this simple proposal? What if I told you that we could save at least 1,000 children's lives from shocks and burns every year? What is this solution, you ask? What we're looking at here is a new power outlet. A power outlet that is not only tamper resistant, but also includes switches, individually switched outlets, so that if you are not using a device, you can turn it off. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of vampire power, but vampire power is when you are paying to feed an electrical device that you are no longer using. This costs the United States $17 billion every year. This costs the average American family $165 every year. There's simple things such as game consoles, televisions, DVRs, that you're not using them, and they can cost you they can use up to 40 watts. We are not even using them, costing the average family up to $40 every year for these stupid things that you're not using. What if I told you that there are 2,400 children every year who can take a knife or a pair of scissors on the ground, stick it into an outlet, and get burned, toasted just like that? And what if I told you that there is no other developed nation on this planet like that? What if I told you that every other developed nation on this planet had shutters in their outlets? And so if you stick a knife or scissors into that outlet, you cannot get into it. What we're developing here, or what we're proposing here, is a tax credit for tamper-resistant outlets. So if you stick a thing in one of the slots, then it won't go in. You have to stick something into both. It's a zero-effort thing. It'll cost an average of 50 cents more per every outlet and potentially save dozens and dozens of lives. What we're also proposing here are individually switched outlets so that when you're not using a device, then you can just easily flip it off. What if you had something like this under your computer desk? If you're not using your computer, your printer, all your devices there, just kick it. It'll switch right off, and that could save you $50 a year. Would you use that? I think I would. So what we're looking at here is it's a 30% tax credit. There is no mandate here. A 30% tax credit. So 30% of the cost of these items could be deducted straight from your taxes. And with that, I yield my remaining time to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. We will now move on to the non-debatable technical questions portion of this proposal. Are there any such questions on the floor at this time? Texas, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Missouri, Washington, Minnesota, Virginia, Texas, Wisconsin, Florida, Massachusetts, Oklahoma, Missouri, Washington, Minnesota, Maine, Alaska, Arkansas, Virginia, Utah, Florida, Pennsylvania, New York, South Carolina, Massachusetts, Texas.
Whitley Drinker, Commonwealth of Virginia. What is 30% of the average cost of these outlets?
So for the average home, the average extra cost would be $45. So whatever 30%.
Thank you, Delegate. Next question.
Quentin Keller from the Republic of Texas. Do you have a statistic on the current amount of wasted energy through light energy that has a switch?
Light energy, I'm unclear of, but it's $17 billion.
Thank you, Delegate. Next question.
Sydney Cladnick, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Sir Chair. Are there other viable options available to consumers besides the 120-volt example you provided in lines 15
I'm sorry, Delegate, that's debatable. Next question.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Deirdre Kennedy, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What companies manufacture these products?
There are several companies that manufacture very similar products abroad. There's nothing quite like this.
Quentin Huvel from the Republic of Texas. What is the installation process for these outlets?
Exactly the same as any other outlet.
Thank you.
Ryan, Minnesota. How many children per year die because of electrical shock from outlets?
Numbers are unclear, but it's
Thank you, Delegate. Next question.
Marcy Hannick, Missouri delegation. Approximately how much energy will be saved with these outlets?
If 25% of people adopt it, about $5 billion worth of energy every year.
Thank you.
Molly Randall, Washington State delegation. Is there anything you have to do to get this tax credit, like any form to fill out?
It goes on your normal tax forms. It's just a simple 30% deduction, so you subtract like $15.
Thank you, Delegate.
Michael Miller, Pennsylvania delegation. Have any other countries incentivized the installation of these type of outlets?
Yes. Well, in most other countries, they're mandated by law, but we don't do that here.
Aaron Clays, Commonwealth of Virginia. What would be the cost of the manufacturing change for outlet manufacturers already in the U.S.?
Extraordinarily minimal. All we're doing is like combining two existing things.
Mackenzie Smith, Republic of Texas. Are these switches manufactured in the United States?
Many are. In about 25 states right now, they're actually already mandated, and so there's lots.
Thank you. Next question.
Davin Turner, Missouri delegation. Thank you, Chair. How much would the average person would have to spend for one outlet?
One outlet would cost about 50 cents additionally.
Thank you, Chair. Q. Lomac, New York delegation. Can the author please define a plastic plug cover for outlets?
That would be a plastic cover that goes over outlet and can easily fall out or maybe be choked on by a child.
Thank you.
Ellie Craig, Wisconsin delegation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you please define the major area to be affected?
Yes. So what I said on here was energy. So basically energy use throughout our nation.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you, Chair. Ariana Brooks, New York delegation. Just to clarify, can you provide some examples of power vampires?
Yeah, so the biggest culprits in our homes are usually game consoles. Even like a little Wii can use 10 watts all at once. TVs, HDTVs can use up to 40 watts.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. Thank you, Sir Chair. Annie Winsley from the state of Washington. Can you please repeat how much the average household loses from power vampires each year?
Yes, the average household loses $165 every year.
Louise Holloway, Maine delegation. Thank you, Chair. Will federal agencies be giving funds to make this change, or will they have to do it themselves?
So for the average federal building is actually pretty small. So the average cost would be less than $100 for a federal building. And this is not a mandate to rewire existing ones. It's only if there is like a renovation or a new building built. It'll become commonplace.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. Megan Garrett, Commonwealth of Virginia. Would this tax credit continue indefinitely, or would it have a time limit?
As of now, it will continue indefinitely.
Thank you. My name is Tina Strock, and I am from Florida. What part of the wall are most electrical outlets located in?
What part of the wall?
Yeah, like where on a wall?
Usually the lower quadrant of the wall, I'd say.
My name's Cole McCubbins, and I am from Utah. So what percentage of the people with these power strips actually flip off the power when they're not in use?
Power strips are used pretty commonly in the United States, and they can be easily flipped off. The investment is so minimal here that anything people do pay off.
Cole Moody, Ambassador Delegation, State of Alaska. Are there currently manual switches available for GFCI outlets currently used in bathrooms?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, the time for non-debatable technical questions has elapsed. We will now move on to the intent portion of this proposal. The chair wishes to recognize the CON intent speaker. Is the CON intent speaker on the floor?
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Hannah Townley, and I am from Florida. I would like to open with two quotes. The first is by Thomas Jefferson, and he said that government which governs least is what governs best, for its people discipline themselves. The second quote is by another great philosopher on limiting the scope of government to as preserve our personal freedoms. His name is Ronald Swanson, and he once said, "I have a joke for you. The government here uses your tax dollars efficiently." All humor aside, the query that comes to mind is how a proposal regarding electrical outlets has anything to do with government inefficiency. Why would we require references to small versus large government? However, please stick with me for a moment. This proposal argues for limited energy efficiency at the blatant disregard of government inefficiency. Everyone loves a good tax rate or credit, but this tax credit does not save money or stimulate businesses. For the 60 cents it will take to upgrade every light switch or outlet in the average 75 outlet home, there's a $13 tax credit. But as homes file these tax credit papers, and then agencies, because since the amendment states that all federal buildings will be required to have these outlets, the IRS will be clogged with more paperwork being filed for these tax credits. More IRS employees will have to be hired to go through with these requests. The IRS already is a backlog system that epitomes inefficient bureaucracy with an 11.2 annual budget and an estimated 2-month follow-through on requests. This proposal would only increase that inefficiency by slowing the system. People should be welcome to purchase these outlet additions. I have no problem with that. Yet the government does not have the place to determine which light switch we are required to use. To amend a statement from the Declaration of Independence, we have the right to life, liberty, and here's where I add something on, the choice to our own electrical outlets. According to a 2014 study by investigative journalist Matt Charley, half of all British and American citizens leave on electrical systems such as lighting and heating when they leave their homes. British citizens included, a country that has already used and utilizes these outlets. If we're already forgetting to turn off our lights when we leave a room, how are we to be expected to go to every one of the 75 outlets in our homes to turn them off each time we leave? As for the tamper-resistant slots, they are simply a less feasible alternative to the plastic covers we already use. They keep children out. Also, according to a McGarry and Matson Home Agency initiative, these slots do not work 60% of the time. To include yet another quote on how important electricity is to our lives, I will say this: it's the freedom of seeing the light. It's Ben Franklin with a key and a kite. You see it, right? Do you see it? Do you see how important electricity is to our lives? The unnecessary regulations outlined in this proposal simply dilute our personal freedoms guaranteed to us under the Bill of Rights. Our freedom to choice, no matter how small and seemingly insignificant of a choice. That expands.
Thank you, Delegate. Your time is elapsed. We'll now move on to the pro-intent speaker. Is the pro-intent speaker on the floor? A reminder to delegates that 1 tap of the gavel represents 30 seconds remaining and 2 taps of the gavel represents 10 seconds. Your time has begun.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Zach Robinson, Massachusetts Delegation. When I found out I was speaking pro on this proposal, I was ecstatic, because this proposal seems minuscule. It seemed minuscule to me in third committee, But it's not minuscule, and I'm going to explain 2 reasons why this proposal needs to be enacted in the United States of America. The first reason is these switches save electricity. We are in desperate need to control the amount of electricity we waste in this country. And even on a small scale like this, these act almost like solar panels, in which you save electricity. You might not generate electricity, but you're not wasting electricity. So you're saving money in general. It's also a much smaller investment than solar panels. The average solar panel costs $25,000 to $35,000, and this is just a 50-cent upgrade per electrical outlet. So we're comparing $35,000 to a 50-cent electrical outlet. So it's a cheaper investment with a much faster return than solar panels, The second reason, it saves lives. You might not think that 1,000 lives, 2,400 lives is important, but think about if that person was your brother, your sister, your child, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew, your cousin. Would it seem important to you then? Would you want this proposal to be passed? Because I know I would. I would like to quote Spock, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." Or in another way, the lives of the many outweigh the lives of the few. But that does not mean the lives of the few don't matter. These children are the future of our country. What if one of them cured cancer? What if one of them achieved world hunger? What if one of them gained world peace? If the greatest country in the world cannot protect the lives of its future generation, then we have no right to call ourselves the greatest country in the world. So in conclusion, we're saving energy and lives, and this will catch America up to the rest of the world. I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. With that, we are at the close of our intent portion of this proposal, and we move on to the con-pro portion. Is there a con speaker on the floor at this time? The chair wishes to recognize Sharma of Pennsylvania. Please make haste, Delegate.
Rishan Sharma, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Sir Chair. I reserve the right to yield any remaining time to Drinkard of Virginia.
That is your right.
Lightning, coconuts, ladders, hot tap water, vending machines, falling out of your bed. All causes that cause more deaths per year than electrical outlets. 1,500 people die per year from death by coconut. So why don't we write a proposal to eliminate the plantation of all future coconuts? You know why? Because it is defined as an anomaly. In the unpredictable world we live in today, a death from anomaly can occur, and statistically speaking, if the number of deaths are less than 1% of the population, it can be considered out of the government's realm of perspective. This proposal affects 0.0006% of people within the United States of America. Secondly, to address vampire outlets, one simple solution: unplug the plug from the outlet. Problem solved. No need to go replacing the scores of outlets within your homes for a shocking $13 tax refund. Secondly, if the American consumer truly values the implementation of this outlet, demand for this outlet will rise. Therefore, the supply for this outlet will rise. There is no need for the government to get involved to incentivize something that does not make that much of a tangible change. Thank you, and I yield all remaining time to Drinkard of Virginia.
27 seconds.
Whitley Drinker, Commonwealth of Virginia. I'd just like to put out some math here. It costs on average $200 for the maintenance work to change out outlets, and then on top of that, you're paying that $45 to pay for these outlets, and that tax credit of $13.50, and the cost of you're probably going to get that, you get that 30% tax credit, $13.50, but in the end, you're paying about $66.50 for the average household on top of everything else.
Thank you, Delegate. We will now move on to our pro speaker. Is there a pro speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes South Carolina in the very back. Ross. Make haste.
I reserve the right to yield the remainder
I'm sorry, Delegate, you did not state your name and delegation. Is there another pro speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Damien of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Christine Deeming, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to Farmer from Virginia.
That is your right.
Okay. everyone. I think we're forgetting the fact that this proposal is focusing on several key things that we all deem important in our society. Children and energy efficiency. Guys, we are in a society right now that cannot afford to not be energy efficient. We're in 2016. Why the heck do we still have outlets that are wasting our energy? It's wasting our money. A previous delegate brought up the fact that it'll cost, like, I believe $45. That is a one-time fee. Over the time when you're paying your bills, this will pay off in the long run. And honestly, the idea of the plastic caps on the outlets being able to save your child's life, a child can easily pop that off. Maybe not an infant, but a young child that is very curious can easily pop that off and be able to, be able to just hurt themselves in the long run. Thank you. I yield the remainder of my time to Farmer from Virginia.
Stephen Farmer, Commonwealth, Virginia. I'd like to point out an example used of how 1,500 people die from falling coconuts every year. See, I mean, we could mandate that we can't plant any more coconut trees, but that is not equivalent to what this proposal is doing. This proposal is more like suggesting that you don't walk under a coconut tree because a coconut could fall and kill you. It's not mandating you do anything. It's just a suggestion and an incentive that could help to save lives in the United States. Thank you. I yield the remainder of my time to Chair.
Thank you. We'll now look for a con speaker. Is there a con speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Prosopio of Louisiana.
Sarah Procopio, Louisiana. I reserve the right to yield any remaining time to Jindal from South Carolina. Will the author yield to a series of questions?
Do you yield? Yes, sorry.
How many outlet-related deaths are there a year?
Directly, dozens. Indirectly, several thousand.
And how many outlets are there in America?
There are quite a few.
Okay. How many people have died in federal buildings due to outlet deaths?
I'm unsure of that statistic.
Thank you. Okay. What if I told you that it may be subsidized, but when was the last time anyone went to rebuy outlets for their entire home? Also, what if I told you no one is going out and replacing all of their outlets for more expensive outlets? Also, yes, it may only be a one-time purchase, but more people usually have more than one outlet in their home. So that way the cost really stacks up. Also, if the market wanted these outlets, they'd be cheaper and more available already because that's how market procedures work. If you want it, demand goes up, supply increases. It's just free market economy. There are places that need these tax dollars way more. So if you're talking about a power vampire, I kind of equate this proposal with sort of a tax vampire. There are places and people who need this money, and I'm sorry, but it needs to go there, and it needs to go there more quickly than this. And for that, I yield the remaining time to Jindal from South Carolina.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Chair. Vishal Jindal from South Carolina. And the purpose of our federal government is not to solve every single problem in our daily lives. The purpose of our federal government is to create currency unity and a military unity. It's not meant to solve every problem in our daily lives. If anything, that is what local and state governments are for. Our federal government is not meant for this. I yield the remaining time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. With that, we will now look for a pro speaker. Is there a pro speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Burgess Simpson of New York. Delegate, your time has begun.
Francesca Bergeret, and I am from Nevada. I would like to reserve my right to yield the rest of my time to Halim from Massachusetts.
That's your right.
I am in full support of this proposal. I think it's a great idea. It's not forcing anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. It's simply creating an incentive to be more energy efficient and also to have more safety in the home as well as in federal buildings. Like I said, it's not forcing anyone to do anything. You don't have to upgrade your outlets if you don't want to. But it is something that isn't very costly and you would still be receiving a tax break. It's very feasible. Like he said, it would only be about a $13 tax break for each person. So it's not like the government is spending billions of dollars on this proposal. I would like to yield the rest of my time to Halim from Massachusetts.
Thank you. Dean Halim, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. A previous con speaker addressed that people wouldn't go out and rewire all of their outlets because of this proposal. But people and businesses alike do a radical thing in this country, and it's called build new homes. And if we had a tax subsidy for the electrical outlets in new homes, maybe people would put some more energy efficient outlets in there, and maybe we would have 2,100 more living infants who could contribute to our society and change people's lives and do great things. Furthermore, as the radical Massachusetts lib that I am, I love that this proposal is going to help us conserve energy. We are in a state where my city of Boston, the most beautiful city in the world, a true paradise for mankind, could be underwater in 40 years. Florida, you are from Florida, but you might be underwater in 40 years if we don't stop what we're doing. If we don't stop the tremendous energy waste that we currently have. We need to take steps to stop climate change, and this is a great proposal for that. Thank you. I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Doug. We will now move on to a con speaker. Is there a con speaker on the floor at this time? The chair wishes to recognize Florida, Townley.
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Hannah Townley, and I am from Florida. And I would like to reserve my right to yield any remaining time to Baharawa from Wisconsin. Please.
That's your right.
Thank you. My fellow delegates, this proposal, is not economically feasible. This proposal does not have enough national importance. The outlets we currently use fit our needs. The plastic covers simply can be put in place that a child can't put them out with a simple addition of electric tape. That's what my home always used. We have much better ways that we can be allocating our time. We don't need the government telling us how to run our outlets. There's much better things our government should do, not regulating such a small thing. And I would like to yield any remaining time to Basher Wall from Wisconsin.
Delegate Sahil Baharawala from the beautiful state of Wisconsin. Thank you, most magnificent chair and clerk and previous delegate. The only problem that I have with this bill is that I'm unsure what's going to happen with all the plastic from the old outlets. I don't know if they're going to go into landfills. I don't know whether that's, I just don't know what's going to happen. And I worry that the extra plastic in the landfills will accelerate global warming and eventually lead to the destruction of mankind. So therefore, I cannot support this bill. I yield the remainder of my time to the chair and clerk.
Thank you, Delegate. With that, we will now move on to a final pro speaker for this proposal. Is there a final pro speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Fields of New Mexico. Delegate cease the undercurrents.
Fields, New Mexico. Sir Chair, I reserve my right to yield any remaining time to Shields from New Mexico.
That is your right.
Fellow delegates, I would like to address a couple of con arguments in this speech. First, it was brought up that people have the choice to choose their electrical outlets. However, I would like to bring up the fact that many people didn't know about these electrical outlets. I know I certainly didn't before Delegate Sowers brought this up. And then furthermore, someone brought up the free market defense. However, again, we have an imperfect consumer who is not educated on all of their available options. And so the free market would not have ever thought of this, but now that we know of it, it's much more likely to be used. Someone brought up the idea that you can just unplug your devices. Unplugging your devices is actually really difficult. There's a reason we put light switches on our Christmas lights and we don't just unplug them because, yeah, we do have a bit of a lazy problem. And then somebody brought up the idea that apparently not enough people die of this phenomena for us to fix it. And so I feel like we should fix any problem that creates death that is fairly easy to fix. And that coconut statistic was worldwide, and we're just talking about deaths in the United States because we're really the only people who still have this problem because everybody else chose to fix it. And when someone talks about clogging the IRS, well, I'll point out that every dollar we spend in the IRS produces 6 in taxes. And now I yield my time to Delegate Shields from New Mexico.
Thank you, sir. Chair River Shields from the state of New Mexico. Fellow delegates, this is one of these rare proposals that manages to fix two tremendous problems with one really simple solution. And for that reason alone, we should rise in strong proposition for this proposal. Additionally, I just would like to remind you that this is an incentive-based program.
Thank you, Deli. We'll now look for a final con speaker on this proposal. Is there a final con speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes New Jersey, Reinhardt. Your time has begun, delegate.
Brianna Reinhardt, New Jersey delegation. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Chen from Mali United Nations.
That is your right.
Okay. So although I would like to believe that every American is responsible enough to use these individual switches, it seems improbable that even 25% of the population will maximize the potential of these switches to save energy. Additionally, these tax credits seem unclear and inefficient and take away from our potential to invest in alternative energy. When compared to other countries, our alternative energy consumption and investment is abysmal. Currently, only 1% of the federal budget is allocated to environment, and private businesses struggle to receive enough government subsidies to fund effective green energy sources. Why not focus on the energy of the future rather than a most probably inefficient system of energy efficiency? Government R&D for renewable energy in the U.S. is approximately $4.4 billion out of a $3 trillion budget. This is just sad, and every dollar counts. With that, I reserve the remainder of my time to Chen from Model UN.
Chen, Model UN, thank you, Sir Chair. While my previous delegate has spoken about one of the tremendous problems we allegedly face, I'd like to talk about the other tremendous problem we allegedly face, the safety of our children in our homes. Now, this might seem a microscopic scale, but this thing does absolutely nothing to protect the safety of the children in our homes because it's such a microscopic issue. Children get burned, children get shocked. Well, guess what? There's more dangerous things in your home. The stairs are dangerous to kids. The stuff under your sink is more dangerous to kids. Heck, people leave loaded guns in their home, and that's more dangerous to kids. This thing does literally zero to protect the overall safety of children in the United States, and overall it burdens the federal government with unnecessary regulation while providing minimal benefit on both the macroscopic and microscopic scales. I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Thank you, delegate. With that, we will now move on to the author's final summation. Author, you will have a time of 2 minutes and 4 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. There are some things I want to remind delegates here. First off, this is literally not a regulation. This is literally not a mandate. This is literally an incentive. An incentive that, yeah, maybe you don't think that it's worth it to spend $22 million a year to save $5 billion a year in electricity. Maybe you don't think it's worth it to spend $22 million a year to not only save the dozens of lives of children, but also the 4,000 premature deaths and heart attacks that occur because of the coal energy power that we would save from doing this. And to answer some previous delegates' questions about the last time that we all switched our electrical outlets, that was actually in the 1970s when we add the familiar third prongs that you wouldn't get shocked all the time, which I think was a pretty good idea. It makes using stuff so much safer. Now we have like GFCI outlets for bathrooms. And in terms of costs really stacking up when you have a lot of outlets in your home, yeah, it really does stack up to the tune of about $45. Personally, if I could stop my kid from falling down the stairs for about 50 cents, I think I'd go ahead and hop in and do that. I find that point a little bit ridiculous. Now, to speak to the point that we can't afford this and whatnot, now we already provide 30% tax credits, literally identical to this one, for solar panel systems, which, as a previous delegate mentioned, cost an average $25,000 to $30,000. This proposal will add such minimal cost for such maximum investment. I realize this seems like a crazy thing, that such a small thing could have such a big difference. And I realize that invites some absurdity, but I invite everybody to look back and maybe recognize that this is actually a pretty good idea. And if we can actually spend $22 million a year to boost our economy to the tune of $8 billion, to get back 130,000 lost work days, to cut out 2,000 heart attacks and 2,000 other premature deaths, and to make sure that 2,000 kids aren't getting third-degree burns from sticking scissors in our outlets, then maybe that's a good idea. I'm sorry if it's absurd, but sometimes hard problems have pretty easy solutions. All these numbers, by the way, were projected with a 25% usefulness rate, which is such a pessimistic thing. If we have any idea of how we're going to push the United States to the next level, how we want to update our outlets and our electrical systems to make people safer and save literally billions of dollars a year.
Thank you, delegate. We will now move on to the voting portion of this proposal. Will the rovers please seal the chambers? The motion before this plenary session is that proposal number 320 be passed. All those in favor, please stand and in a normal speaking voice say aye. All opposed? The nays have it, and this does not pass. Division has been heard and will be recognized. Delegates, as the rovers point to you, please do not be seated until they have made eye contact with you. Will all those in favor of this proposal please stand? Pay attention, delegates, close attention. This is a silent time. All opposed, please stand. With a vote of 283 in favor and 270 opposed, this proposal does pass. Thank you, delegates. Will the author of the next proposal please begin to make their way to the front of the room?
It's our guy just saying it's current talks. This is what this current talks about securing the 7% of the local territory, but Brent wants to take a territory and switch it.
Thank you.
Love you.
Thank you.
Before we hear the next proposal, the chair would just like to remind all delegates to please keep side conversations to a minimum and to respect all speakers during this next proposal that we hear. Seeing as how the proposal author for proposal number 484 is present, would the clerk please read the title and any amendments?
The Reformation of International Drug Policy. There are no amendments.
Thank you, Sir Clerk. The proposal author will now be recognized for a 4-minute opening statement. Proposal author, you may begin when ready.
Vilasan Varpu, Delaware Delegation. Thank you, Madam Chair. I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to my closing summation. Fundamentally, the war on drugs has failed. On a domestic scale, our determination to punish people has led to a horrific system of mass incarceration, and internationally, violence has led to the deaths of thousands of people. A war on drugs should not be a war on people, but for some reason it continues to be. For the past 50 years, the United States has aided and abetted a civil war in the nation of Colombia, a war with the intention of destroying terrorist organizations and the cocaine trade that has instead killed 500,000 citizens. It is time to revamp the way the United States fights the $10 billion cocaine trade. My proposal aims to accomplish this through 3 steps. Step 1, restructure United States foreign aid so America will decrease its police and military aid to Colombia in favor of economic aid. Under Plan Colombia, the United States has pledged $10 billion over the past 15 years to Colombia, 80% of which has been police and military assistance. My proposal reallocates this funding to expand the scopes of programs like Products of Peace, which supports farmers in producing alternative products like bananas, rather than coca, which is used to produce cocaine. Furthermore, Aid to Colombia's development program will establish training centers if farmers want industrial jobs. Step 2, encourage growth. Kiva, an international microfinance institution, will work to increase field partners in Colombia. Field partners loan money to farmers without access to traditional banking systems, so farmers can invest in alternative crops. The U.S. will help with the initial funds required to establish these field partners, and the Kiva model will encourage increased investment in Colombia. And step 3, protection. Through the United States is shifting funds from the military, let me make it absolutely clear that the protection and safety of farmers supersedes anything else in this proposal. The military will work to protect farmers as they transition into producing alternative crops. This proposal fights for the basic rights, the basic decency, and the basic opportunity every single person in this planet, Colombian or American, deserves. For 15 years, we have fought with guns to achieve a mission that has led to nothing but suffering, struggling, and strife. Above anything, this proposal prioritizes the safety of farmers and defends the dignity all Colombians deserve. The war on drugs is a war on substance and crime. It is not a war on people. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to my closing summation.
Thank you, author. The clerk will make a note of the yielded time. The floor is now open for non-debatable technical questions. Are there any questions on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes South Carolina, Virginia, Model UN, New York, Maine, Texas, Massachusetts, Ohio, Massachusetts, Virginia, Texas, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Texas, Connecticut, Virginia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christina Demon, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Is Colombia's national sovereignty addressed in your proposal?
It's a partnership with the nation of Colombia.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mallory Burchell, Delegation Maine. What % of our cocaine comes from Colombia?
I believe over 70%.
David McCurdy, Commonwealth of Virginia. How much money is in the world cocaine trade annually?
$10 billion.
Thank you.
Matthew Dowling, Ohio Delegation. Where else in the world has the Kiva model been used?
Internationally, all over the world.
Thank you, author. Next question.
Aaron Clays, Commonwealth of Virginia. Will the alternative crops bring in the same amount of income as coca?
Absolutely.
Jeremy Nelson, Commonwealth of Virginia. Will having environmentally friendly practices be a mandatory condition that determines whether a farmers association receives support?
It will be part of the consideration.
Spear, Great Plains State of Oklahoma. What is the cost of the cocaine in America that originates from Colombia?
I do not have that statistic.
Cameron Kubera, Massachusetts Delegation. Are there currently U.S. troops in Colombia?
No.
Evan Garber, Pennsylvania Delegation. Will any U.S. troops or troops be deployed to protect the farmers?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Q. Lomac, New York Delegation. How many criminal and terrorist organizations fund their operations through international drug trade?
There are several.
Thank you, author. Next question.
Lillian Bond, Republic of Texas. Will the farmers be receiving American or Colombian military protection?
Colombian military protection.
Thank you.
Quentin Hubel from the Republic of Texas. Will these terrorist groups that you mentioned in your proposal be profiting off of the crops that you had mentioned?
I'm sorry, delegate. That's debatable. Next question.
Gordon, Commonwealth of Virginia. What is the estimated cost of the investment in microfinancing and all of these alternatives to the drug production?
It's $100,000 for every field partner the United States will help establish.
Next question.
Carlos Tamayo, Massachusetts. What other countries export cocaine into the United States?
Peru.
Kellogg, Minnesota. What is the percentage of U.S. cocaine that comes in from Colombia?
Over 70%.
Claire Nelson, Commonwealth of Virginia. What percentage of Colombians are farmers?
I do not have that statistic.
Thank you.
Lauren Linus, the Republic of Texas. Where is this Kiva business that is going to be providing these microloans based?
There are specific regions in Colombia which has seen an increase in cocaine production.
Thank you, author. Next question.
Thank you.
Decker Palmeier, South Carolina. Will any U.S. military assets be used to support Colombian forces in protecting farmers?
No, only funding.
Okay. Alex Sanderson, Model UN Delegation. What's the average annual income of a Colombian coca farmer?
I do not have that statistic.
Lucy Hill, Model United Nations. Will any agencies be responsible for regulating trade in order to prevent agricultural monopolies?
The United Nations.
Chris Flynn, State of Connecticut. Will the United States only provide funding to the soldiers for protecting these farmers, or will we continue to provide funding for the Colombian military to fight against both left-wing and
I'm
right-wing?
sorry, delegate. That question is debatable. Next question.
I was just asking if we'll still fund that.
Next question, please.
Trey Pugale, Commonwealth of Virginia. Could you expand upon how Amnesty International will prevent human rights violations?
Essentially, in the past, the military has colluded with paramilitary organizations. That will not be
Thank you,
tolerated.
author. Further questions? Ohio, Tennessee, Louisiana, Maryland, Wisconsin, Texas.
Matthew Dowling, Ohio Delegation. Can you give an example of a country that has been successful underneath the Kiva model?
There's regions that the Kiva model has worked in. Colombia is one of them.
Jordan Clements from the Republic of Texas. So does this proposal do anything to decriminalize the use of drugs?
Possession up to 1 gram of cocaine is already decriminalized in Colombia.
Thank you, author. Next question.
Yusuf Dallas, Tennessee. Have United States military services ever been directly ordered to work with paramilitary groups in order to combat the drug trade?
I believe so, yes.
Bahira Walla, Wisconsin. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Clerk. Thank you, Author. Author, are you aware that coca leaves are grown?
I'm sorry, delegate. That question is debatable. Thank you, all delegates. The time for non-debatable technical questions has elapsed. We are now in order for the CONA intent speaker. The chair would like to recognize the delegate from Oklahoma. Dixon from Oklahoma, you're recognized.
Destiny Dixon, Oklahoma.
Even though this is a well-written proposal and the war on drugs needs to be fixed, there is a major flaw within this proposal. First, if you right now Google and just simply search Colombia, the first thing that pops up are hundreds of news articles stating FARC and Colombia make a peace deal, doing the same thing as this proposal. This peace treaty is happening right now as we speak. So if we begin stacking this proposal topic on the actual peace treaty, that makes no sense. This issue is already being solved as we speak. Second, now if the author might say, well, my proposal does more than the peace treaty right now. Actually, it does not. The only difference between this proposal and the peace treaty is that the United States will be aiding this peace treaty at this proposal topic, which I think is absolutely absurd. Right now, instead of fixing the FARC, which has been going on for the past 50 years, we have a bigger major problem to fix within the United States, and that's ISIS. The FARC, the Colombians have not asked for us to give them help for the past 50 years because they said, the Colombian government says they do not want our help. The polls said the people don't want the United States to interfere in their FARC. So why are we all of a sudden trying to interfere after these past 50 years? As we all know, thirdly, of knowledge that Colombia is one of the top corrupt places in the Western Hemisphere. So the only way America can honestly truly make a difference is sending our own men and women over there, which I also think is absolutely absurd. Obama has given full approval of this rating of this peace treaty that's happening right now. But that doesn't mean we have to throw away money. We don't have to continuously throw away the money that we do not have in aiding Colombia because we don't have the money to protect our own citizens right now. So why are we going to go protect some other systems that have constantly said they do not want the United States help? Thank you. I yield the remaining time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. The chair accepts your yield. We are now in order for the pro-intent speaker. The chair would like to recognize Delegate Shaw from California.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Benjamin Shaw from the California delegation. First off, I'd like to start by stating that this proposal is not a peace treaty, but a reallocation of aid. Now, begin. Fellow delegates, the war on drugs has been a failure. We have tried to punish the victims of drugs, not the source. This proposal marks a shift to the right direction and does so in a way that helps the innocent victims of this war in both America and Colombia. The American victims are those whose addiction has led them to prison. The Colombian victims are those who are forced to grow coca leaves under threat of death. Cocaine is the common factor between the two. According to the United States Department of Justice, 54% of federal drug offenders were arrested for possessing cocaine. Cocaine is the major source of revenue for FARC. FARC has made Colombia the source of 95% of the cocaine in the United States. The proposal on the table ensures farmers are safe and free to farm crops other than coca, such as honey, coffee, and cacao, in order to save the Colombian victims from FARC and the American victims from cocaine. Since 2000, we have given $10 billion to help Colombia with their war. This has constituted only 5% of their total military expenditures. This means we can reallocate this money with small impact to the military, but a large impact to the farmers. Under this proposal, we will invest our money in substantial protection for the farmers. We will also invest in Kiva to provide new opportunities. Kiva is an organization that makes loans accessible to people like Colombian farmers to help the transition from inefficiently growing coca to easily growing legitimate crops. They have been extremely successful in the 6 years they've been in Colombia. They've given out 4,300 loans with a repayment rate of 97%. That means 97% of the time these loans work. By passing this proposal, we not only reduce the major cause of drug offense in America, we also help farmers live in
Your
peace
time
and
has
prosperity.
elapsed.
Thank
The floor is now open for con-pro debate. Are there any con speakers on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Model United Nations in the back. Delegate, your time has begun.
Paul Somalia, and thank you, Madam Chair.
I reserve my right to yield any remaining time to Delegate Ware from DC.
That is your right.
So I oppose this resolution on this proposal on one main point. As a previous delegate already brought up, Columbia's already fixing this problem. The reason that we are making this American problem is because of the spillover effects from an issue in Colombia. However, as we've seen with a plethora of international issues, when we get involved in an issue, when it is already being solved by the nation that is already having the issue, it just complicates matters. If the Colombians are solving it, let the Colombians solve it. Give them time. They have a peace treaty on the table. They're going to solve the issue, and it's going to solve itself. And in a few years, we will be seeing major benefits in America because we didn't get involved. Whereas if we get involved now, who knows when it will stop? Sure, this proposal does not call for any military involvement, but who knows what the next proposal will call for if this one doesn't work out in the long run. I yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Ware from DC.
Thank you, Ariana Ware, DC. I'd first like to start by saying that cocoa is one of the major cash crops in South America. It is not mainly produced in Colombia. Actually, while 60% of American cocaine is from Colombia, more than 60,000 pounds of cocoa is obtained from Peru, and 50,000 is from Bolivia, while only 15,000 is from Colombia. So affecting the sales on only Colombia will not actually impact this issue greatly. Also, I'd like to also identify the fact that cocoa is a naturally growing product all throughout South America, and that is why it is so hard to zone in on, because it grows all throughout the rainforest, it grows on the sides of mountains, and it is produced among farms. So while we're only targeting farmers here, it is not going to completely remove the cocoa source and product. Cocoa is also something that is trained not only in South America, but in Central America.
Thank you,
and
delegates.
Caribbean.
Your time has elapsed. The chair would now like to recognize a pro speaker for this proposal. Are there any such speakers on the floor at this time? The chair would like to recognize California Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nicholas Gardner from the California delegation. I reserve my right to yield to Delegate Damien from Massachusetts.
That is your right.
Now, this proposal is near and dear to my heart because even though my name might not show up, my family is actually from Colombia, and I've had an uncle that's actually been held hostage and held for ransom by the FARC. So I think I understand this issue in a lot more deeper context. And let me tell you this, we can't trust the FARC. This problem is not going away anytime soon. It's been 50 years. I think there's a point where we're going to be like, okay, maybe we should talk about this and address the issue. I think what we need right now is economic empowerment for the farmers of Colombia, because the main reason the FARC is still around is because they get $3.5 billion every single year from these products. We need to make sure that the farmers of Colombia are economically empowered, because that means that the FARC is going to be weak. And now to the point of the new peace agreement, personally, I don't really trust the FARC, and I don't think anyone in the Colombian government does. So, in fact, this makes sure that as the peace process moves forward, the FARC will be weakened because their main source of revenue will be substantially cut off. And now I'd like to yield the remainder of my time to the delegate from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Christina Deming, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Guys, I'd like to address a point. I like green tea, I like black tea, most of all, I like sovereignty. And that is what this proposal does for Colombia. I also like to address the point of Kiva. For those of you that don't know what Kiva is, it allows for anyone, even you and me, to be able to donate to these farmers. And quite frankly, these farmers actually, it's an agreement that they pay the people back that donated the money. So therefore, anyone can be able to donate to these farmers to stop drug production. That means that me and you can be a part in the stopping of the drug production in Colombia. And quite frankly, with the peace treaty, this proposal was written before the peace treaty was even mentioned. So therefore, I think we need to address the fact that and focus on that as opposed to keep bringing up the peace treaty. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you, Delegate. The chair accepts your yield. Before we hear from the next con speaker on this proposal, the chair would like to remind all delegates that amendments are now in order and will remain in order for 10 minutes. Is there a con speaker on the proposal at this time? The chair would like to recognize Crane, Oklahoma.
Crane, Oklahoma. Thank you, Madam Chair. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time from from Oklahoma.
That is your right.
So, will the author please yield to a series of questions?
Does the author yield?
Absolutely. So, do you see any potential lashing back from the current drug operation that's currently operating in Colombia?
Sure, they just rejected the peace deal.
So, what do you think could be the consequences of more economic involvement and more intervention in Colombia by the United States?
We're not increasing any intervention. We give a certain amount of money to Colombia. We're shifting that from military aid to economic development.
Thank you. I yield the rest of my time to Pi from Oklahoma.
Thank you. My name is Raghavendra Pai from the state of Oklahoma. Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the Products of Peace program that's actually in the proposal, there's no long-term empirics to say that this is actually going to be successful, and so expanding it and increasing aid to it has no evidence to say that it'll actually help the Colombian people. In regards to the Forest Born program, that is a second part in the proposal for action, it puts farmers' lives in risk because of the power void created by the FARC's demilitarization. So actually the peace treaty is making this situation worse for the farmers, but this proposal is actually not helping the farmers because of the power void. The elimination almost guarantees more violence in Colombia because of the power void. And this proposal does not provide and actually reallocates away military aid for the people of Colombia, therefore increasing the problem for farmers. Next, we find that the author might state that we're actually providing military support for the farmers, but that's not true because of the rampant corruption that actually goes on inside Colombia. The U.S. oversteps legal jurisdiction by extending the ability to suspend military aid and military action and police action, because if you look at the last part of the proposal for action, it states that there's a criterion for how this aid is given, and actually that criterion is based on Amnesty International guidelines that Amnesty International has actually released, stating that the Colombian government is actually part of the human rights issues, blamed for government forces in unlawful killing, torture, forced displacement, and rape by the government forces, which means that in theory, the United States would actually stop all aid to Colombia based on this proposal because of these Amnesty International
Thank you, delegates.
guidelines.
Your time has elapsed. The chair would now like to recognize a pro speaker on this proposal. The chair recognizes Bryant, Colorado.
Saxon Bryant, Colorado delegation. I reserve my right to yield any remaining time to Lynette of Texas.
That is your right.
A flower is a beautiful thing. When it blooms in the summer, it's one of the most magnificent things we can ever see. Yet it only blooms for so long. When winter comes again, the flower will close, and the opportunity to see that beauty will be gone. Similarly, right now we are at a blooming when it comes to Colombia. With the current peace treaty, we are at a chance to actually try and change this country for the better. We are at a chance to renovate and reform our drug policy to move this country from a country of drugs to an actual stable, developed nation. We have a chance to revolutionize the way Colombia trades with the world and interacts with the rest of the global community. And that can only be done through today's proposal. Only right now, in the current midst of peace between the FARC and the national government, does this proposal have a chance of bringing about the results it intends. And for these reasons, we must support it. Because right now is the best time for change and the best time for progress. I yield the rest of my time to Lynette from Texas.
Lauren Linus, the Republic of Texas. First off, I'd like to start by saying that my best friend, Alex Diaz, is a first-generation American, and her family is from Colombia. Her family has not been able to return to Colombia because of the corruption and the absolute disaster that is in Colombia because of FARC right now. Furthermore, I'd like to say that these peace talks with FARC began in 2012, and 4 years later, they have gone nowhere. We have seen no progress in Colombia. This is not only a Colombian problem, this is an American problem, because the drugs that are coming in from Colombia are affecting our American citizens. Furthermore, we have a huge population of Colombian immigrants in the United States, and it is time that we start acting and benefiting these people because they are part of our country, and we have contributed to the problem that is Colombia, and it is time that we take responsibility and start trying to fix. Instead of providing military aid, we need to be reallocating funding to be helping the farmers that are on the ground that need this chance, that need this help to prevent
Your
corruption.
time has elapsed. It is now in order for another con speaker. Is there such a speaker on the floor? The chair recognizes Shakar, Pennsylvania.
Wesley Sheeker, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Madam Chair. I reserve the right to yield my time to Wavell from Texas. Delegates, I urge you to look beyond the issue we unanimously agree upon and look at a solution that simply will not work. This solution is analogous to a similar plan that the United States has used in Afghanistan for over a decade. 6.4% of Afghanistan's population participates in opium trade, and U.S. Marines have desperately attempted to convince these farmers to switch to planting crops and staple crops that could feed the population of Afghanistan. Unfortunately, we have failed. PBS, the U.S. News Report, and many others report that the fight against opium production costs more than $12 billion, and this proposal will cost a similarly exorbitant amount of money. The drug policy briefing on Colombia that interviewed hundreds and thousands of farmers in Colombia stated, and I quote, "The unilateral changing of the rules of the game by the state and the limited and transitory nature of support mean that the newfound citizenship due to the programs listed in this proposal was partial and temporary based on being a beneficiary of state help. In other words, any success that these programs listed in this proposal achieved were temporary and did not provide these farmers, these people who desperately need help, with the long-term sustainability that this proposal claims to be able to achieve. This is a time when FARC is demilitarizing, but their production of coca bushes has increased because they fear that conflict will once again start. Antagonizing FARC by this proposal, which will not even work based on other examples of the United States applying similar proposals, and interviews of farmers who are in this industry suggest that this proposal is not a way to end conflict, but to antagonize further conflict. Finally, our military aid was ineffective in defeating FARC. Why can we expect that our economic aid will
Thank
be
you,
better
Delegate.
used
Your
by
time
Colombia?
has elapsed. The chair would like to recognize the final pro speaker on this proposal. Is there such a speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Keller Maine.
Thank you, Chair. I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to Peck from Alabama. I think one of the best aspects of this proposal is that it simply brings forth a peace treaty between the U.S. and Colombia, or the FARC and Colombia, and it does not actually utilize military action, which is the best aspect of this proposal, I believe. And it's also been brought up that there has been a peace treaty going on, but it was started in 2012. It was actually terminated of March this year. It's went nowhere. So we need to utilize this, because this peace treaty that we've been talking about that has been going on didn't work. So with that, I yield the remainder of my time to Peck from Alabama.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Peck, family of Alabama. What have we seen in Colombia so far with the U.S.'s foreign policy? We've seen complete chaos. A waste of $10 billion with military aid that has had helicopters spraying fields with toxins, leading to health concerns with many people, and the displacement of 6 million and hundreds of thousands dead. What have we seen? We've seen a policy that has not worked at all. But what we see is if we implement this proposal that the author has presented to us today, as the United Nations reports have shown, it has decreased the amount of cocoa farms in Colombia right now over the past few years by implementing this right now. We're seeing progress in the status quo through doing this, and we're not seeing the death of hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. I urge you to support this proposal. Thank you.
By his actions, the delegate has yielded the remaining time to the chair. It is now in order for the final con speaker on this proposal. Is there such a speaker on the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Isaacson, Missouri.
Maggie Isaacson, Missouri delegation, and I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to Fuller from Washington. Cocaine and the criminal enterprises it supports are both incredibly dangerous and destructive. Unfortunately, simply attacking the coca supply will not solve this issue. The main cost of cocaine comes from its transportation across borders, not the coca itself. The cost of enough coca to make a kilo of cocaine is about $600, while the cost of a kilo of cocaine as it crosses in the United States is about $16,000. The United States has been focusing on driving up the price of cocaine by destroying coca on a wide scale, but it has yet to be effective. When multiple other countries produce coca, the effects on violent criminal enterprises will be minimal at best. It's time to fix this problem, but attacking the supply side of the cocaine trade has not, is not, and will not work. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to Fuller from Washington.
Ethan Fuller, State of Washington. I'd like to quickly bring up a few points here that have been incorrect or glossed over through this proposal. As of 6 years ago, the only remaining cartel in Colombia producing and manufacturing and selling cocaine is the Mendoza cartel. They're currently deemed inactive because the Colombian government militarized over 20 years ago and has slowly chased out all the cartels. Currently, most of your cocaine production is coming out of Bolivia and Brazil. Brazil currently is having a serious drug war, and a body count has risen over the last 5 years as a result of it. They have had instances of cartels dumping bodies on the freeway to assert their dominance. The drug war in Brazil is much worse than Colombia. I have personally toured Colombia repeatedly. The drug issue has gone down. It's gotten better. The Colombian government, who has refused our help, has been doing a good job. They have personally been making strides. This bill, though admirable, would be better suited in a country like Brazil or Bolivia that is currently facing a crisis similar to that Colombia faced in the 80s, and as of current is not currently facing. So I urge you all to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. The time for ComPro debate has now elapsed. Before we move into the author summation, I'd like to remind all delegates that the undercurrent will cease for the summation. Author, you are recognized for a 3-minute and 24-second closing summation. You may begin when ready.
Vilasan Varpu, Delaware Delegation. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this incredible opportunity to present before you. I'm beyond honored and beyond humbled from the bottom of my heart that I've been given this opportunity, and I love you all from the bottom of my heart. So let's get into debate. The fact that this proposal is so clearly in line with the desires of the Colombian government should be a point in favor of this proposal, not a point against. And the strategy to deal with any extremist threat is to win the hearts and minds of people, the people of Colombia. And that is not done through war, that is done with the wallet. First and foremost, farmers do not want to be a part of the violent cocaine trade. They do not want to face death threats from paramilitary organizations, and they do not want to live their lives in fear. They want an out, and they need an out, and this proposal gives them that out. So Products of Peace has been extremely successful, helping eradicate over 6,000 hectares of illicit crops and promoting the production of legal crops. Products of Peace has resulted in efficient industries and sustainability that improve the quality of life and strengthens peace. The United Nations partnership with Products of Peace has allowed for farmers to even work with the private sector through supermarkets like Carrefour so that these alternative products are available nationally and internationally. Furthermore, Kiva infrastructure will be expanded to cocaine hotspots, where production has greatly increased. These regions include the Pacific and Central regions, and when you give farmers the opportunity to invest in other crops, they will do so because they do not want to be a part of this cocaine trade. Furthermore, the U.S. can afford decreased military assistance because as FARC and the Colombian government work towards peace, both sides need to de-escalate the situation. Before another group overtakes the cocaine trade, it is critical that the United States shifts its foreign policy so we can facilitate a transition to a more legitimate Colombian economy. Even more so, the United States aid to fight cocaine trade accounts for 5% of all of Colombia's own spending against the trade. So as we shift from military aid, the Colombian government is more than capable of protecting its own citizens. 40 years of experience have shown that alternative development works when there's a long-term vision, adequate funding, and political support, all of which are established by this proposal. The United States must make this critical investment into alternative development again. This proposal is incredibly important because as FARC, the primary proponent of the cocaine trade, lays down their arms, other groups are beginning to expand it. This proposal not only stifles the amount of cocaine entering the United States, but it also empowers the people of Colombia to rise up and take a shot so they are captains of their future, and criminal groups are not. We have a chance to correct and improve upon 15 years of foreign policy so Colombian farmers no longer need to suffer. The time is now. The time is now. The time is now to act. Delegates, please join me in doing so. Join me in building a society of peace, not a society of war. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Thank you, delegate. The chair accepts your yield. Will the rovers please seal the chambers? The motion before this plenary session is that proposal number 484 be recommended to pass. All those in favor of the passage of this proposal, please stand and in a normal speaking voice say aye. Aye. Please be seated. All those opposed, please stand and in a normal speaking voice say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. This proposal does pass.
Thank you so much. I love this project. You took something so complicated and made it so simple in that last speech. Thank you, thank you. Oh my God, I'm so... But let me get this together.
You dropped a couple.
Can you put them here for me?
Could I briefly have everyone's attention? If you leave this plenary session and you come back, please wait to take your seat until the speaker who is currently speaking has finished. So just please try to stay seated and remain in your seats or return to your seats during breaks in the speakers. Thank you.
Oh, Natasha.
Delegates, this plenary session will come to order. The next proposal under consideration is proposal number 152. Seeing that the author is present, will the clerk please read the title and any amendments?
Proposal 152, to curb heroin use through the legalization of heroin-assisted treatment. There are no amendments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Proposal author, you have 4 minutes. Begin when you are ready.
Sean Bott, Louisiana. Thank you, Sir Chair. So right now, those addicted to heroin can get fined and even imprisoned. And the opioid epidemic is growing. If you Google search heroin epidemic over time, and you Google search that, most results will show up with some type of graph with some type of increase. Our country's policy is that addiction is not a disease, rather it is a crime. Our government attempts to fix this problem through overprescribed medications that treat opioid addiction, but relapse ranges from 60 to 80%, and from 2002 to 2011, fatal opioid overdoses increased by a total of 286%, and this is according to the CDC. Our medications do not always work. So we need to move a step further and move from medication-assisted treatment to heroin-assisted treatment. Basically, through this proposal, medical heroin called diamorphine will be legal to treat opioid dependency. Now, many of you may think that this proposal is just radically giving out heroin to addicts, but that's not what this is, and here's why. Some people may unhealthily smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, but if they want to quit, they set a quit day and gradually wean off that nicotine. And this same concept applies to heroin-assisted treatment. Patients, after they opt in by prescription, can use diamorphine at specific clinic sites with medical supervision to reduce their dependency. Several countries have already implemented this, and it's shown that heroin addicts in these countries have committed fewer crimes like theft, possession, distribution, spread fewer diseases like HIV and hepatitis because they have clean needles, and finally, they can even sometimes find employment. And lastly, because of medical oversight, heroin-assisted treatment has a 0% overdose death rate. In Europe, there was a study done on some of these trials, and here, 1 second, let me get that up. Over the past 15 years, 6 randomized controlled trials have been conducted, and they provide strong evidence, both individually and collectively, in support of the efficacy of treatment with fully survived and self-administered heroin when compared to oral methadone for long-term refractory heroin-dependent individuals. And this was a 2012 report by the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drugs Addiction. Basically, to conclude, this country has a zero-tolerance policy on illicit drugs, which unfortunately closes the bridge to treat addiction as a disease. If you're having second thoughts, please, 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 I ask you, just remember this. This proposal is not really that radical of an idea. It's just that heroin addicts in this country have been stigmatized that badly. With that, I yield the remainder of my time to my closing summations. Thank you.
That has yielded 1 minute and 23 seconds to his closing. Will the clerk please make a note of this? We'll now move into non-debatable technical questions. Are there any such questions on the floor? Chair recognizes Colorado, Missouri, Tennessee, Texas, Texas, Wisconsin, Missouri, Virginia, Massachusetts, New Mexico, Alabama, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New York, Washington, Utah. Delegates, the undercurrent will cease. Thank you.
Joseph Smith, Crown Republic of Texas. What other countries have legalized this form of treatment?
So give me 1 second, I have a list. So I don't have the list on me, but some
Thank
include...
you. Next question.
Thank you, Christina Damien, Commonwealth of Massachusetts. How long is the suspension period for the driver's license?
Say that one more time.
How long is the suspension period for the driver's license for over 18?
Until they get out of the program.
Thank you. Next question.
Yusuf Das, Tennessee. From where will this medical heroin be sourced?
Pharmaceutical companies that are overseas.
Stephen Farmer, Commonwealth of Virginia. Will the patients have to remain inside the clinic while they're under the influence of the diamorphine?
Yes.
Marcianic, Missouri. What is an example of contamination that can be found in heroin on the streets?
So different blood poisonings like HIV and AIDS.
Thank you.
Davin Turner, Missouri delegation. What will be the punishment for federal possession charges?
This is not a punitive proposal.
Next question.
Mackenzie Smith, Republic of Texas. Does the amount of heroin they get at each treatment decrease over time?
Yes.
Next question.
Selena Montoya from the next delegation. Where is the primary research for heroin-assisted treatment being done?
Other European countries and Canada.
Thank you.
Michael Brown, Republic of Texas. How much funding will it take to fund these HAT programs?
Sorry, delegate, that's debatable.
Ryan, Minnesota. How many persons participated in said studies?
It depends on the country, thousands.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Madam Chair, Font Utzia from Colorado. Roughly how many addicts to heroin are in the United States today?
The amount of addicts is 457,000.
Thank you.
Addison Smith from the family of Alabama. Thank you, Sir Chair. How have the percentages of relapses decreased as a result of the implementation of these treatment facilities in other countries?
So 40% go into abstinence-based programs and 30% go back into medical assistant treatment.
Thank you. Next question.
Quentin Hubel from the Republic of Texas. Will the recreational use of this medical heroin be legalized?
No.
Thank you.
Reese Bailey, Wisconsin delegation. Thank you, Sir Chair. Can street-level heroin be chemically derived from diamorphine?
Yes.
Richard Sharma, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What is the cost per gram of diamorphine?
I do not have that at the moment.
Chance Pierce from New Mexico. What is the difference between the medical heroin and the traditional street heroin?
So medical heroin is, it's taken from heroin, and pharmaceutical companies pull the chemical that actually gives you the high. Street heroin is just grown, and it's from random sources.
Carl Nielsen, Washington State. Is Switzerland the only country that has fully implemented this HAT system?
Switzerland, Belgium, and a few other European countries.
Thank you.
Coleman Cubbins, Theodemocracy of Utah. What percentage of those administered HAT ultimately end heroin use?
40% go into abstinence-based programs.
Next question. Thank you.
All right, Q. Lomac, New York delegation. Can you please state some countries that treat heroin as abuse as a disease?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Can you please state some countries that treat heroin abuse as a disease?
Basically, any country in Europe, Canada.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Annie Wensley from the state of Washington. Have similar policies been positively implemented elsewhere?
Yes, in Pennsylvania.
Further questions on the floor. Chair recognizes Alabama, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Texas.
Peck, family of Alabama. How many medical staffers will have to be on site to supervise injections?
That will be determined by the DEA.
Jojo Manor, Massachusetts. How long would it take for an addict to be fully treated?
Say that again?
How long would it take for an addict to be fully treated?
It depends on the addict.
Jordan Clemens from the Republic of Texas. Will those currently in prison for heroin use also be released and subject to your proposal?
No.
Cindy Clymer, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Sir Chair. Could you provide a statistic that links the crime drop in
Sorry,
HAT
Doug, it's
patients?
time for non-debatable technical questions has elapsed. It is now in order for a CONA intent speech. Chair recognizes Delegate Natarajan from Missouri.
Rakesh Natarajan, Missouri delegation. Thank you, Sir Chair.
While I applaud the intent of the author, I am in negation of this proposal due to several reasons. The first reason that I negate this proposal is the National Drug Schedule. The National Drug Schedule is a system used to classify drugs into different classes. Heroin and all drugs derived from it are classified as a Schedule I drug, meaning that they cannot be sold for both recreational or medical purposes. The Act of Congress that established the NDS specifically stated that in order for Congress to change the classification of a drug, they must explicitly state the new class on the bill, or in this case, the proposal. As this proposal never states the new classification of heroin, the government would not be able to enact this proposal as it never properly changed the legality of heroin in medical procedures. The second reason that I negate this proposal is due to the fact that the author attempts and fails to mimic other nations. In his opening, the author gave statistics from other nations and other studies. However, please disregard all of those statistics because in every nation listed by the author, the nation has provided heroin, psychosocial counseling, and methadone. A study published by Lancet Scientific Journal concluded that providing pure heroin, as stated in the proposal, led to an insignificant change in the number of drug users. However, when the three elements used by every nation are used in conjunction, there is a significant change. Therefore, you must disregard all of the author's evidence about other nations, as their system is fundamentally different than the one described in this proposal. In addition, the Lancet article is the only study that directly tests the author's claim, and that article specifically stated that it was an insignificant change. The final reason that I negate this proposal is the fact that it is entirely unnecessary. The government already has methadone clinics. Methadone is a drug that has no withdrawal symptoms, is not addictive, and can be used to ease an individual off of heroin. In addition, the government also has these places where a person can go and they can essentially inject themselves with heroin using safe and sterile needles. Congress actually recently passed this bill last year, and they haven't actually set up any of these places yet, but by next year they will be set up. So in conclusion, I'm opposed to this proposal as the author doesn't properly legalize heroin. This proposal is ineffective without the other two aspects used by every other nation, and the government is already attempting to solve the heroin crisis, but we need to expand our current programs instead of creating a brand new one. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to the chair. Thank you.
Chair accepts your yield. It is now in order for a pro-intent speech. Chair recognizes Chandler from Alabama.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Chandler, family of Alabama. Delegates, overdoses caused by heroin and other opioids killed more than 27,000 people every year. For more than a decade, heroin and heroin addiction has evolved into an epidemic in this country. This disease affects people of all socioeconomic classes as well as all races in a frighteningly large age range, and it's about time we did something. More than 500,000 Americans used heroin in 2013 alone, a 150% increase from 2007. This obviously has not always been the case. At the turn of the century, cocaine was the leading killer amongst drugs, killing nearly twice as many people as heroin and opioids. However, by last year, opioid-related deaths were up by nearly 400%, overtaking cocaine as the #1 drug-related killer in the United States of America. Delegates, this is a disease, and it's about time we started treating people as such. Each time a heroin addict goes to jail or goes back to jail, we are failing to get them the rehabilitation that they so desperately need. They aren't getting anything out of going to prison time and time again. Rather, they're getting something from the rehabilitation and working back to get their lives back together. Moving on, this proposal provides a safe facility in which addicts can be ensured that their treatment is both federally regulated and effective, considering the overdose death rate for diamorphine is 0%. The legalization of heroin-assisted treatment provides us with a practical, workable, and safe solution that so many people in this country desperately need. I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Chair accepts your yield. The floor is now open for con pro debate. Chair is in search of a con speaker, such a speaker present. Chair recognizes from South Carolina, Samard. Delegate, your time has begun.
You're smart, South Carolina, and I reserve the right to you the remainder of my time. To Doss from Tennessee.
Such is your right.
I'm against this proposal because with the 4.2 million Americans who are over the age of 11 who have tried heroin, and with 23% of these becoming addicts, we are not solving the problem with this. And this proposal fails because in essence, we are not helping the people that need the help. Because in the proposal, it states that you must be an addict of daily use for 2 years. And with a drug addiction this bad, time is of the essence. And every second we waste, that's another death that's going to happen. So furthermore, with the effects of heroin being loss of breathing, so you cannot breathe anymore, and the fact of heart failure, we need to act fast. And the author will say something like, it's better to save some lives than other lives. But I would completely agree, except for the fact when we can save the lives and stop unnecessary deaths, which is why we need to fail this and get a proposal that will actually help immediately. Without our remaining, the remaining of my time. Doss from Tennessee.
Yusuf Doss, Tennessee. I'm not here to argue the efficacy of heroin-assisted treatment. I'm here to basically point out a problem that I have with the proposal in the way it's written. It says that to qualify for a prescription of heroin, a patient must be at least 18 years old, have been addicted for at least 2 years, present signs of poor health, have failed 2 or more methods of conventional treatment, and surrender his or her driver's license. Now, I think that those are simply too restrictive, especially the one where it says you must have failed 2 or more conventional methods of treatment, mainly because if this treatment system is as effective as the proposal author says that it is, then they shouldn't have to go through the runaround of having to go through these treatments and fail it when it is such a stressful process. They should be able to go straight to the most effective treatment if this is indeed what that is. So with that, I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Chair accepts your yield. Before we continue, delegates are reminded to maintain respect for the speakers. That includes approaching the author or the parliamentarian using the sides of the room and not attempting to bring attention to yourself as someone is addressing the chamber. We'll now move into a pro-debate. Are there any delegates wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Chair recognizes Nowling from Ohio.
Matthew Nowling, Ohio delegation. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Espian from Maryland.
Such is your right.
As we all know, heroin is a major, major issue in our country. In my home state of Ohio, over 23 Americans die every single week because of heroin. Heroin-assisted treatment has been proven to be very effective in many countries, such as Netherlands, Germany, Canada, Switzerland, and Spain. Just in the Netherlands, this treatment has been over 87% effective. And I urge you to support this passage of this proposal, because this proposal would save many of Americans, not only in my home state, but in many of you guys' home states, because heroin is an epidemic in this country. And I reserve my right and I yield the remainder of my time to SBN from Maryland.
Gideon Epstein from the Free State of Maryland. I live less than an hour away from the nation's capital. I live less than an hour away from Maryland's capital. But most notably, I live less than an hour away from the heroin capital in Baltimore City, where 60,000 addicts live out of the 600,000 residents. Yes, that does mean that 1 out of every 10 residents in Baltimore is addicted to heroin. This is an epidemic across the country, but especially in Baltimore. This proposal is finally a fresh solution that will not promote mass incarceration like we've done for the past 10, 20, 30 years. I urge all of you to support this proposal. I yield my time to the chair.
Chair accepts your yield. A reminder, delegates, amendments are in order for the next 10 minutes. Chair is now in search of a con speaker, such a speaker on the floor. Chair recognizes from North Carolina, Given. Your time has begun.
Thank you. My name is Rebecca Given from North Carolina delegation, and I would like to speak in opposition of this proposal. While I do applaud the author's intent and do know that heroin is a big deal that affects many. In 2 years, I watched a heroin addict ruin his life 3 times over. 2 years is enough to land yourself in prison, to become a 3-strike felon, to become homeless. And daily usage, that's a real thing. But that happens a month after. And this happens to people as young as 5. Okay, we need to push off heroin-based rehabilitation using other drugs, because I remember taking my brother to rehab where they use Suboxone, which is the same thing as this is trying to do, and he looked scared because he didn't want to become addicted to something else. I urge you to vote in opposition for this, because we need to take aside things like using other drugs to get rid of drug abuse and make room for other rehabilitation. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Chair accepts your yield. We will now move into a pro round. Are there any delegates wishing to speak in favor of this proposal? Chair recognizes Halavy from New Jersey. Delegates?
Ben Halevi, New Jersey delegation. Thank you, Sir Chair. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Machala from South Carolina.
Such is your right.
Over 33,000 cases of HIV in 2012 were due to injectable drug use. That is a major issue. If this proposal is enacted, they can provide clean needles for those with prescriptions so they can ease themselves off of heroin instead of continuing for the possibility of using dirty needles and having much worse consequences happening to them. I strongly urge the entire chamber to vote positively for this proposal to reduce diseases as a result of dirty needles, as well as reduce the amount of heroin addicts in this country. And as the previous delegates stated, this is an epidemic that needs to be solved immediately. And I yield the remainder of my time to Machala from South Carolina.
A minute.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Jonathan McCullough from South Carolina. I'd like to bring up a few of the con points. One was that this needs a new section for the drug schedule, but again, this is a proposal. We're debating the idea, and I'd like everybody to keep that in mind. Also, someone said that this is unnecessary because we do methadone testing. In a study in Canada done, 87.8% of diamorphine retention treatment after 12 months compared to only 54.1% for methadone. So this is a vast increase in the type of drug that we are using. Someone also said that this is not reaching the people that we are trying to help because of the restrictive criteria, but that's just targeting the people, the exact people that we do need to help. And also, someone said that it is troublesome because you get addicted to another drug, but these are not addictive drugs. It is weaning you off
Delegate.
of
The
the
chair
drug.
is now in search of a con speaker. Is such a speaker on the floor? Chair recognizes Williams from Florida. Delegate, your time has begun.
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Hannah Williams, and I am from Florida. And I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to McNichol from Texas.
Such is your right.
Sorry. Okay. So I believe there's a major problem with some of the feasibility of this. So when you do this, when you enact this proposal, they have to suspend the driver's license of people that are addicted and seeking treatment. This seems like a good idea, besides the fact they have to go to the doctor's office twice a day. And also, a lot of low-income families can already not afford to do stuff like drive people around all the time. So combined with the fact they don't have a license and they have no family members possibly to drive them, this is kind of an issue. Additionally, they have to fail 2 methods of treatment to seek this treatment. So they have to kind of like look for maybe illegal and dangerous methods of treatment before they're even viable for this option. Lastly, I would just like to bring up the fact that someone brought up the HIV thing and like the cleaner needles. That bill has already been passed, so that's kind of a null and void argument. I'd like you guys to consider this, and I yield my time to McNichol from Texas.
Amy Madeline McNichol from the Republic of Texas. While I applaud the author's intent in this proposal, my one concern is that there's no mention of any monitoring or drug testing of a patient while they're in this program, and we cannot make sure that they are actually following the rehabilitation program of this. And there's no accountability in this program for the patient, so there's no way to ensure that we are actually helping the patient rather than making it actually worse and contributing to the problem in this proposal. I yield my time.
Chair accepts your yield. We will now move into the final pro speaker on this proposal. Is such a speaker present? Chair recognizes from Massachusetts, Kubera.
Thank you, and through you, Sir Chair Cameron Kubera, Massachusetts delegation. I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to Schwartz from Texas, Missouri.
Such is your right.
This is an essential proposal with a remarkable solution to the opioid epidemic in this country. We need to remove the shame and stigma of addiction that plagues this nation, and affirm the fact that it is a disease. We need to bring people out of the shadows and allow them to receive this treatment that is necessary to wean them off of heroin. So the best part of this proposal is that it targets people who are in the most need of this treatment, people who have gone through rehab several times and it's been unsuccessful, people who have been trying for 2 years to fix their lives, to move on with their lives, and this proposal is a necessary step in the right direction in order to provide the necessary support for those people who have been trying the hardest, who have gone through multiple treatments, and who need this the most. So I yield the remainder of my time to Schwartz from Missouri.
55 seconds.
Maggie Schwartz, Missouri delegation. Though this idea could seem scary, this is professionally produced pure heroin or a heroin substitute compared to the drug found on the street that could have contamination as detrimental as rat poison. So many of the extreme adverse effects that would be avoided through this pure manufacturing. And I would also like to take note that manufacturing such drugs opens kind of a new industry, production, administration, and management never seen to the world, which is wonderfully innovative and could be lucrative to the United States as a whole. Thank you. I yield my time to the chair.
Chair accepts the yield. We are now in search of the final con speaker. Is such a speaker present? Chair recognizes from Kentucky, Sims.
Blake Sims, representing the heroin crossroads of America, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I reserve the right
Sorry,
to yield.
Delegate, you did not display your placard. Please take your seat. We are now searching for a final con speaker on this proposal. Chair recognizes from New Mexico, Johnson. Delegate, your time has begun.
Thank you, Sir Chair. Chad Johnson from New Mexico. I'd like to make a motion to extend pro-con debate by 2 rounds.
It has been moved that pro-con debate be extended by 2 rounds. This motion requires a second. Second. All in favor of this motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Nay. Is it the opinion of the chair that the ayes have it, this motion carries? Division has been heard and will not be recognized. The chair is not in doubt. Seeing as that was not a con speech, we are still in search of a con speaker. Is such a speaker on the floor? Chair recognizes from Maryland, con.
My name is Alexander Kahn, and I am from the Free State of Maryland. I reserve my right to yield the remainder of my time to Flores from Delaware, and will the author yield to a question?
Author, do you yield?
Yes. Will this proposal change the scheduling of heroin?
It's implied, yes.
It is implied?
Mhm.
All right, well, you see, this proposal does, well, maybe it implies that this would reschedule the drug. It does not specify that fact. Now, I celebrate this author's intent. And in fact, as you have previously heard, I too live in the same city as a previous delegate who spoke for the pro. I too live less than an hour away from the heroin capital of the world in the free city of Baltimore. But however, I cannot support this proposal until it specifies that this will be changing the scheduling of heroin from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. Because as Schedule 1 specifically states by the DEA, which our author himself has cited in some of his sources, Schedule 1, according to the DEA, has no accepted medical use. If such medical use has been found, then it must be rescheduled. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to Flores from Delaware.
Delegate Flores, representing Delaware. I would not like to, first, I would not like to debate the national importance of this. In fact, I would like to debate whether or not this will make a difference. We're going to give these people 2 chances to fail in other rehab methods. That's 2 chances they could get addicted to opioids. This isn't going to make a chance. If you say that this method actually works, why not let them have this method to take for their very first chance in order to get off these drugs? And I would just like to say, taking away their driver's license, what other rehab methods takes away your driver's license? And in fact, this is just going to put them further deeper into their addicts, because they're not going to be able to get a job. They're not going to be able to simply, if you're a drug addict and your mother, you're not going to be able to take your kids
The chair is
anywhere.
now in search of a pro speaker, such a speaker on the floor.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes from Delaware, D'Souza.
Thank you, Sir Chair. My name is Mabel D'Souza, and I'm from the Delaware delegation. I reserve my right to yield any remaining time to Keller from Texas.
Such is your right.
Okay, so addiction recovery rests on the vestiges of hope, and when hope is lost, in many of these cases, recovery is also lost. The people who are helped by this proposal are those on the verge of losing hope after 2 tries. It does not matter if, in the cases of HAT, overdoses are rare and quickly treated with antagonists like naloxone, thereby relieving patients from the horrid tortures of illicit heroin use. Furthermore, this is safe because synthetic heroin taken under these conditions is neither neurotoxic nor dangerous, and side effects are very short-term, such as constipation. It has been thought that the availability of such treatment options might increase heroin use, but the rate of heroin abuse in Switzerland, where this was enacted, has declined sharply. The idea that patients in heroin-assisted treatment possess destructive behavior is false, as patients have been found to recover in terms of both their social and health situation. In fact, a German study found that 40% of all patients and 68% of those were able to find employment after 4 years of treatment. To address a con point, psychological counseling and methadone are alternatives, yes. However, this proposal is for those who don't respond positively to either treatments, and that is what European countries have been doing as last-ditch treatments which have been found to work. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to Keller from Texas.
35 seconds.
Thank you. Quentin Keller from the Republic of Texas. I want to bring up a group of people that this proposal will also help, and that is our veterans. In 2009, military doctors wrote approximately 3.8 million prescriptions for painkillers. Veterans taking these drugs tend to develop a dependence on them, and this is magnified if they suffer from PTSD. Some veterans addicted to prescriptions for pain and PTSD often turn to illicit substances, and the cheapest illicit substance to get is heroin. With that being said, these veterans can try to get help from the VA, but we all know what happens whenever they try to do that. That really
The chair
doesn't
is
work.
now in search of a con speaker, such a speaker on the floor. Chair recognizes from Washington, Farley.
Katie Farley, Washington State Delegation. I would like to ask the speaker a possible series of questions and then reserve the remainder of my time to the delegate from Delaware, Edwards from Delaware.
The latter is your right. Author, do you yield?
I yield.
Okay, are you aware that so you said that the drugs would be purchased from other countries?
From overseas pharmaceutical. Yes.
Okay, are you aware that it is currently illegal to purchase pharmaceutical drugs from other countries?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so would this bill be changing that?
Yes.
Could you point me out to where it says that?
It's implied because this is just a proposal.
So it's just implied?
Yes.
Okay. With that, I reserve the remainder of my time to Edward from Delaware.
Dakota Edwards, Delaware Delegation. Thank you, Chair. So, from a harm reduction standpoint, giving people heroin that we know is safe reduces the likelihood of overdose related to fentanyl-laced heroin, which is far too common. But using buprenorphine, Subutex, is a step safer than using heroin-assisted treatment because it is only a partial agonist rather than a full agonist, which means that any kind of overdose is very unlikely. Buprenorphine and naloxone combinations, like Suboxone, are a step safer than Subutex because it is also a medication cocktail that includes an opioid blocker. From least to most safe, heroin, methadone, buprenorphine, naloxone, which is Subutex, and naloxone. Safe means the likelihood of an overdose. It doesn't mean that heroin or methadone may be more successful over some kind of patients because it's a case-by-case basis, and it's certainly preferable to straight heroin, but heroin-assisted treatment is inherently more dangerous than the other types in relation to having an overdose. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Chair accepts your yield. We are now in search for our final pro speaker. Is such a speaker present? Recognized from Tennessee, Shramkowski.
Alex Shramkowski, State of Tennessee. Thank you, Sir Chair. I'd like to reserve my right to make a motion.
Such is your right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an important proposal. It establishes major change in the United States. It's going to help millions of people who need this kind of therapeutic treatment, and we need to make sure that this proposal is passed. Unfortunately, when we look at this in terms of the actual technicalities, there is a certain technicality that was brought up on CON that needs to be addressed in terms of how scheduling works, as well as other rehabilitative measures. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to recognize the amendment on the table.
Sorry, Delegate, the time for amendments has elapsed. Thank you.
I yield my time.
We are now in search for the final CON speaker. Is such a speaker on the floor? Chair recognizes the delegate from Michigan. In a case, delegate, your time has begun.
Josh Grimley, Michigan Delegation. I reserve the right to yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Newman from Alabama.
Is your right.
My main stipulation with this proposal is that it is an outpatient-based program. The National Institute of Health has ranked outpatient programs with only 35% completion rate, while inpatient programs have 65% completion rate. Many people who have struggled with heroin abuse have comorbid disorders with anxiety and depression. And the way they can seek this treatment is through therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy and other types of therapy. This is the only way they can stay off heroin for such a long time because they need to fix their underlying mental illness that will prevent them from wanting to seek heroin again. I yield the remainder of my time to Delegate Newman.
Newman, family of Alabama. What does heroin do to your brain? It targets opioid receptors, which are the nerves that tell your brain, ouch, or hey, that feels pretty good. But once heroin is injected, the opioid receptors in your brain are basically lit on fire, and you experience an intense euphoric high. Like many illegal narcotics, it is easy to develop a tolerance, which is why heroin is so addictive. So now that we know how dangerous heroin is, why would we willingly give heroin to the people who are abusing it? I'd like to point you to a treatment called methadone. Methadone treatment has been proven to reduce mortality and crime rates associated with heroin addiction, and it's also been proven to decrease the use of street heroin and increase the time spent in rehabilitation and counseling.
And just as I've heard many of you speak con against proposals on the basis that throwing money at a problem will not make the problem go away, I'd like to say that throwing heroin at the problem will not make the problem go away. Thank you. I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Chair accepts your yield. With that, delegates, with that, the time for con-pro debate has elapsed. We will now move into the author's 3-minute and 23-second closing summation. Proposal author, begin when you are ready.
Shambhala, Louisiana. Thank you, sir, Chair. So before I begin, I'd like to address a few points a few con speakers brought up. So just throughout the whole debate, I got kind of a gist. And it was a kind of subconscious thing with the implication that heroin addicts want to get high all the time. And this is completely untrue in many, many different cases. And it's almost on a scientific level. If you look at heroin addicts, you take heroin, it gets you high the first couple times, but then you develop a tolerance. Once you develop a tolerance, taking heroin makes you feel normal, because when you get on withdrawals, you feel like you're about to die. And so heroin addicts, they don't take heroin because they want to get high anymore. They take heroin because they don't want to feel like they are dying. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that methadone was brought up. So the British Journal of Psychiatry had this study that was done, and they said retention rates in the heroin-assisted treatment program was higher, 67.2%, than in methadone treatments, which was 40%. That is a 30% difference, and that is a significant difference. All in all, whether you are liberal or conservative on the political spectrum, you can all agree that we treat drug addiction wrong in our society because of the war on drugs. And while Obama has said that the opioid epidemic should be at, quote, the top of our radar screens, Chris Christie said that drug addiction is a disease that can happen to anyone at any station of life. And honestly, I do not have a personal story that can back up this proposal, but you do not have to take my word from it. In Canada, a study was done by the Salame/Naomi Association of Patients, also known as SNAP, and patients were put under heroin-assisted treatment for a year. And here's some of the things they had to say. My life is starting to become more manageable and everything now already. I'm only 2.5 months into it. I'm putting on weight. That's one thing. I'm eating better. It stabilized my life, and I don't have to wake up in the morning having to figure out what crime I'm going to commit to pay for my drugs. I'm actually looking for other things in life, like going swimming, leisure, and stuff like that. Another patient said, I have had a year of reprieve, sanity for a full year. Ladies and gentlemen, the heroin epidemic is growing, and in my opinion, I think it is absolutely sickening that we go past apathy. We do something much worse than not caring for those who are addicted to heroin. We throw them into prison, we stigmatize them. And the absolute worst thing is that we act like we're doing the right thing. That is the worst thing that we do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an unavoidable problem, and I think we need an unprecedented solution to the problem. If anything, I think it is time that we all get together and do the right thing. Thank you. This is my final year at CONA, and I'm incredibly grateful that I've had this opportunity that you all have given me. So with that, I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Chair accepts your yield. With that, time for debate has elapsed. And as such, will the rovers please seal the chamber? We are ready to vote. The motion before this plenary session is that proposal number 152 do now pass. All those in favor, please stand and in your normal speaking voice say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please stand and in your normal speaking voice say nay. Nay. By your vote, you have passed this proposal. Will the author of Proposal 269 please approach? Delegates are reminded to congratulate the proposal author outside of chambers. Thank you.
Let me go, wait, I'll go outside the chamber. Hey, good luck.
That's great. That was good. Awesome. I don't think that could have gone any better. Is this yours too?
Yes.
This one I actually just gave to him.
Oh, so wait, this one's mine.
Got it?
Let me go outside.
No, it'll solidify it because those are just one step and like we're trying to get rid of the test. Lit. Love RBG. I'm like, sorry.
The plenary session will resume order. The plenary session will resume order. The next proposal under consideration is proposal number 269. Seeing as the author is present, will the clerk please read the title and any amendments?
Proposal number 269, protection of the women's rights to choose.
Thank you. Author, you are now recognized for a 4-minute opening statement, and you may begin when ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, Marva Sadler is the Clinical Director of Whole Women's Health of San Antonio in the Republic of Texas. She has worked in this field for 7 years, and during this time, she has had 0 women die in her care. Less than half a dozen have complications every year, but dozens and dozens were turned away for the past 5 years because of trap laws or the targeted regulation of abortion providers. One tragic story surrounded a girl who was the victim of a sexual assault. She had driven more than 4 hours from a rural town in North Texas to San Antonio to get an abortion, but she was forced to be turned away, and Miss Sadler had to tell me in tears that she was forced to turn her away because the state required her to have a nurse anesthetist. And if she wanted to get a legal, safe abortion, she would have had to driven to New Mexico, more than 4 hours away, and pay $5,000 on top of hospital costs. Extended waiting periods, like the ones in New Mexico, are just one example of trap laws. Others include physician scripts, admitting privileges, dosage requirements, forced viewings of ultrasounds, forced listenings of fetal heartbeats, limiting a woman's reason to get an abortion, restriction of coverage by Medicaid and one's private insurance, as well as equipment limitations for doctors and requiring a certain amount of personnel regardless of clinic. These laws infringe on the constitutional rights of women guaranteed in Roe v. Wade more than 40 years ago. And they violate Planned Parenthood v. Casey more than 20, because a state has the legal obligation to place a restriction in the path of a woman as long as it does not have an undue burden. Yet every trap law has a burden on women, and most of them rely on financial or commitment obstacles. And they are an injustice across the country, and we cannot stand to see them passed any longer. And before we jump into debate, I'd like to offer you the opinion of the court in Planned Parenthood versus Casey on such a divisive issue. Some of us, as individuals, find abortion offensive to our most basic principles of morality, but that cannot control our decision. Our obligation is to define the liberty of all, not to mandate our own moral code. And with that, I yield my time to my closing summations.
Thank you, author. By your actions, you have yielded 1 minute and 43 seconds to your closing summation. Non-debatable technical questions are now in order. Are there any such questions on the floor? Chair recognizes Florida, Maryland, Colorado, Virginia, Texas, New York, Ohio, Texas, Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington.
Quentin Hubel from the Republic of Texas. Does this proposal provide funding for Planned Parenthood?
No, it does not.
Thank you.
Faxon Bryan of Colorado. Who'll be in charge of defining what counts as a limit on a woman's access to abortion?
It will be under the Department of Health and Human Services.
Whitley Drinker, Commonwealth of Virginia. Will this proposal disallow states to require parental consent for a minor to receive an abortion?
Only if it's deemed an undue burden by the Department of Health and Human Services.
Jesse Searles, the Republic of Texas. How many women have died because of in-home abortions?
The number varies, and
Thank you,
it's
author.
very
Next question.
unknown to know.
Mackenzie Smith, Republic of Texas. How many women attempt their own abortions yearly?
I don't have that number, but between 2011 and 2014, 250,000 women in Texas alone tried self-abortions.
Thank you. My name is Tina Strock, and I am from Florida. Would the state be allowed to put an age-based restriction on an abortion?
Only if it was deemed to not have an undue burden.
Sam Mustafa, Commonwealth of Virginia. What is an example of a trap law?
So a trap law would be something like what was recently overturned with the Supreme Court, as in requiring a physician to have admitting privileges to local hospitals or having building requirements as to an ambulatory surgical center.
Thank you.
Sean Toomey, Massachusetts delegation. What's the current average cost of an abortion?
The average cost of an abortion can vary, but usually it's around $500 for a medication abortion before 10 weeks and $480 for an abortion with local anesthesia.
Thank you, Chair. Ariana Brooks, New York delegation. Approximately how many rape victims seek an abortion?
That number is relatively unknown because women do
Thank
not
you.
have
Next
to specify
question.
why.
Shashank Narayan, Free State of Maryland. At how many weeks is fetal viability reached?
Most recently, the number has been determined at around 21 or 22 weeks.
Michael Miller, Pennsylvania delegation. How is the standards defined for falsely defined in line 35?
Delegate, that is debatable. Next question.
Caroline Greenhalgh, Commonwealth of Virginia. Will the Department of Health and Human Resources be responsible to ensure the implementation of this proposal?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Will the Department of Health and Human Resources be responsible to ensure the implementation of this proposal?
That will fall under their discretion.
Thank you.
Abdul Oriani, the great state of Tennessee. What percentage of abortions in the United States are due to sexual assault or rape?
That number is relatively unknown because women do not have to specify why they get an abortion.
Delegate Sahil Baharawala of the beautiful state of Wisconsin. Author, how many illegal abortions are performed annually?
The number is usually 0, but the sad thing is people do not report.
Thank
when
you.
they have
Next
an illegal
question.
abortion.
Further non-debatable questions on the floor. Chair recognizes Alabama, Minnesota, Tennessee. Both delegates in the back. Texas, Connecticut, Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee, Florida.
Peck family of Alabama. Can you provide an example of what would be considered a doctor providing false information on the effects of an abortion?
A physician's script is a brilliant example. Saying that a woman is at a higher risk for breast cancer or cervical cancer is a prime reason.
Jordan Clements from the Republic of Texas. When does the average woman find out that she is pregnant?
It varies depending on when she desires to have that.
Thank you.
Addison Smith from the family of Alabama. Seeing that the risk may scare off a woman from obtaining an abortion, will the risk of an abortion still be allowed to be disclosed to the patient?
Only if it's deemed to be medically appropriate.
Thank you.
Ryan, Minnesota, does a life begin at conception?
No, according to the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade, it begins at viability.
Lauren Linus, the Republic of Texas. Does the Department of Health and Human Services have any precedent to enforce these standards in places such as
That is
Texas?
debatable. Next question.
Trey Kugler, Commonwealth of Virginia. Could you define undue burden for me?
The court
That
did
is
not-
debatable. Next question.
Miley Palmer, South Carolina. Have these statutes been enacted in any other states?
No, because the only laws states are passing are trap laws.
Sloan Perkins, South Carolina. Besides the one that you gave in your opening speech, can you give another example of when an abortion clinic's abilities have been limited?
In the state of Alabama, one abortion doctor was forced to close down his doors and reopen at a cost of more than $1 million due to restrictions that were medically inappropriate.
Chris Flynn, State of Connecticut. Could the bill, proposal author please define fetal viability?
Fetal viability is the point at which a fetus can live outside of the womb with medical support.
Thank you.
Rose Chansey, Commonwealth of Kentucky. Will insurance companies be required to cover abortions?
They would only be required to cover abortions if it's under a plan, but what I'm trying to address here is states completely eliminating their ability to.
Thank you. At this time, the time for non-debatable technical questions has elapsed. The chair will now recognize the con intent speaker for this proposal. Is there a con intent speaker on the floor? Chair recognizes Short, North Carolina.
Thank you, Chair. Logan Short from North Carolina. I rise in opposition of this proposal for many reasons. Firstly, it flies in the face of judicial precedent, thus rendering it unconstitutional. Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt is the most recent abortion case decided by the Supreme Court. In a 5-3 decision, the Supreme Court struck down a Texas law limiting abortions. However, the restrictions mentioned in this proposal were referenced once in the majority opinion. However, the requirement for clinics to meet the standards of ambulatory surgical centers was mentioned 13 separate times. This reinforces the legal precedent set forth in Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey that unless the undue burden is as severe as the clinics themselves being shut down, the restrictions on abortion of non-viable babies is left up to the states. Secondly, there is confounding disregard for biology. Non-viability is based upon gestational age. The limit on non-viability is generally determined at 26 weeks, where the baby has an 80 to 90% chance of living if delivered at that moment in most cases. Studies of babies delivered at this time show that 86% of them will go home and live with no severe disability. However, under this proposal, there can be no limit on abortion until the baby is deemed viable. And this has several flaws. Number one, it ignores the amount of development between weeks 23 and 24, where a baby's chance to live increases 3 to 4% every day, and the fact that many can be considered non-viable at week 23, but may not be at week 24, and even less so at week 25, and so on. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, it neglects the delicate human activity going on inside the womb in weeks 23 to 26. This is a statement from the What to Expect Foundation about what goes on at that time. Your baby's eyes are beginning to open. This means that your baby can see what is going on and respond to visual stimuli like light. Your baby's brainwave activity is kicking in, and this means that your baby can hear you talking and can recognize your voice and respond by increased heart rate and kicking. This is life. And by Justice Alito said that one's constitutional right cannot trample upon another's. I want to close with a story of Connor from North Carolina. Connor was going to be born in the range of non-viability, and under this proposal, he would be deemed non-viable and able for non-restrictive abortion. However, I'm grateful that he wasn't, because he lives today, and he's a strong, healthy, intelligent 16-year-old boy, a 2-term presiding officer from the state of North Carolina Youth and Government, and a first-year delegate at the Conference on National Affairs. As you consider
Thank you, Delegate. Your time has elapsed. The chair will now recognize the pro-intent speaker for the proposal. Is there a pro speaker on the floor? Chair recognizes Gertz of Texas.
Michaela Gertz, Republic of Texas. 3 of 13 babies will not survive their first week. Now, this fact is not a statistic found by the New York Times or Planned Parenthood. This is a fact that states 3 of my 13 aunts and uncles died a prolonged death because my grandmother did not have the right to seek a just abortion. This fact later changed with the passage of Roe v. Wade, declaring abortions a human right under the Equal Protection and Privacy Clause of the Constitution. Despite this fact, states have taken it upon themselves to oppress women who are begging for help for the sake of themselves and their babies. I can list off each restriction states have that burden these women, but instead I will reference the most recent abortion decision by the Supreme Court. Whole Women's Health v. Hellerstedt was just decided on this past month, and they were on the side of the women, declaring Texas abortion laws were an invasion of these women's lives and privacy. This decision was not made lightly, just as a woman's decision to have an abortion is not made lightly. Nothing about this is easy. In America, you will hear the constant verbatim of pro-choice advocates spouting lies about the dangers of abortion. Here are some real facts. In a study by Planned Parenthood of 170,000 abortions, the complication rate was 1%. From UC San Francisco, of 54,911 abortions, the complication rate was only 2%. The real danger here women face is that of an illegal abortion and carrying these babies. The risk of death from pregnancy and childbirth is 14 times more dangerous than that of abortion. Not to mention the postpartum mental and physical burden these women will face. The state is not my baby daddy. My body is my own, and with this proposal, we will be taking a stand in women's rights backs. To quote Justin RBG, the state controlling a woman would mean denying her full autonomy and full equality. I stand for full equality. Do you? Thank you, and with that, I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate. The floor is now open for con-pro debate. Is there a con speaker on the floor? Chair recognizes Clements of Texas.